right, we're going to go ahead and reconvene our work session. We were discussing the impact fee study, but before we get started, just want to note that we just came from the Braden and Kiwanis Veterans Day celebration, and we had over 50 county employees that were veterans that RSVP'd to come to the lunch. It was quite a celebration of veterans, quite a recognition. And our own Colonel Bussell was also recognized and got a standing ovation. Yay. So everyone was very glad to see that. So it was a really nice lunch. I'm sorry the rest of you couldn't make it. But anyways, we're talking about impact fees. Any questions, discussion? I imagine staff is looking for probably some sort of direction, maybe, even though we don't have to take action.
There's no action. Oh, excuse me.
The mayor hat was last on, I believe.
Yes. We'll go ahead and go to him and then go to the folks on the board.
I believe we've been requested to provide you some information. I think we can do that in short order, probably by the end of the week.
Okay.
Each of you will receive that information, and we're interested in any other thoughts you might have. Again, we're scheduled to be in front of the Planning Commission Thursday, and in December coming back before the board. And when we come back before you, we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. But any information that you desire that you haven't seen to date, we'll be able to provide to you. There's a lot of information, a lot of different levels. But I think you've seen the sum and substance of the impact fee required via the calculation, the recommendations for going at 90%. We can provide you a list of what it would be at other rates and how much revenue that would bring in as requested. So I think we understand the mission.
Okay, great. I got on the board Commissioner DiSabatino, then Commissioner Bussell.
No, I'm fine, thank you, that was from before.
Oh, was it?
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I was very encouraged by some of the comments made by my colleagues here on the dais about your non-hesitation to jump in and go for this. And I was encouraged by the two people that spoke to us from the public as well. And I just want to make sure that my comments were not mistaken. Just by asking about an 80, 85, 90, that doesn't necessarily mean that that would be my first choice. But if all else failed, then that was the only way we could proceed, then I could support that. But I certainly could support going with what the study recommended at the 100% level or 90, depending on what this board does.
I think that's the feeling of most of us. We want to see some more information, and then we're going to have to make a decision, and we have that. What item is it on the Planning Commission agenda? Just so some of us probably want to watch that. First on the Planning Commission agenda?
Yeah, I think it's up first, so.
I think that'll be educational for folks to watch as well, since they're looking at it from a different perspective.
You know, as I said initially, this is an art. We're at the stage we're at now. The science has already been done, and it's drawing that balance between the ability to fund the necessary infrastructure required by new growth versus putting a fee in place that could drive economic development and job creation outside of the county and an unintended consequence. So I don't think there's a wrong answer, and there's no absolute right answer. It's each of you understanding that there's a balance to be drawn, and where is that balance? Is it 90%? Is it 87.5%? Is it 94.2%? There's no right or wrong answer. We just need to go down the path. And if we see something happening in the marketplace that's an unintended consequence, you can always revisit the fee. As stated earlier by Mr. Clegg, you have the study. As long as you stay within the parameters of the study, you're safe to maneuver. You can always revisit.
All right, Robin?
And another red letter day, I completely agree with Commissioner Bustle, so we got 2 today. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
up to something.
Well, I think we're done with that topic. I don't see anyone else on the board. I don't think anyone has any other comments, so we'll be looking for some more information. And this comes back before the board on December
What, do we have a plan the 3rd?
December 3rd.
3rd.
Third.
Good, good.
We'll have the results of what the planning commission has determined, and we'll visit with you, and we'll see what other comments are out there, because we continue to meet with the business community, the chambers, the EDC, other interested parties, and we'll come back with you with any additional information you may require. Thank you, Commissioners.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, for being here. All right. Now we're gonna.
Next is Sherry and Associates.
Hopefully y'all brought your name tags. You might just want to take down the ones in front of you, too.
Yeah. Hello. Good, you want me to pass those out?
This is the same that's both that you gave out.
Secret ways.
Oh, I
Each
think
have
I
a
it.
different
Yeah.
The wellness one?
Yeah, I copied that.
This is different in the book, or?
Yeah, guess so.
Yeah.
We need one here, too.
Yeah, we have one.
Carol said she'd be a little bit late. Had to go visit her. So, yeah, we've all got them. Did Carol get one?
Yeah,
one?
got one.
Is this different that you just, no, they're the same.
Same thing.
We're good, thanks.
2 now.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that's on the,
Here, we have extras, if somebody's missing one. You want to pass that down to the clerk?
More back here.
There's 2 extras.
here I am, Marlon.
You want a copy? And you want to give one to Claire?
Claire needs one.
Mr. White?
Dale, do you have one? Flyer?
Dale needs one.
Dale needs.
Do you have that?
Elaine.
Okay,
You get.
all righty. Well, Russ can grab one. You want to go ahead and get started? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. We have 2 items scheduled for our department, so most the folks that are involved are up here, but we're going to start off with the Southwest County Improvement District item, the Southwest TIF. And back in January of this year, we were in front of you at a work session on the 4th floor, and we had started to establish with you a new procedure in order to deal with neighborhoods. And since that time, we wanted to come back and update you. We were scheduled in September, and we got bumped, and so we wanted you to know we've still been working on all of the process for the Southwest TIF. So for those in the audience that might not know who the team is, I'm Sherry Corrier. I'm the Director of Neighborhood Services. Working directly on this particular item is Ivan Groom, our redevelopment coordinator under Karen Stewart's office in economic development, and Ogden Clark, who is our ambassador coordinator working under Debbie DeLeon in neighborhood planning. And so we've been working along with Debbie's team and the rest of Karen's team to continue to work in the Southwest TIF. And as you know, you also adopted a budget this year that allowed for at least some funds to be set aside in some various categories. And the items that we're going to be addressing are allowable under those items. When the Neighborhood Services Department was created back in 2007, we pulled together a lot of different resources that didn't have an individual home. And so, as you know, we have those 4 divisions. We have economic development, neighborhood planning, community development, which does our housing program, and as I think was stated earlier today, we have We're scheduled in January to come back and do a full review of housing issues in the community. And then our library division, who has been a great asset to coming on board with neighborhood services, because it also gives us access to the community, and it helps the community learn more about the county's programs. Today, though, we're here to present to you the Neighborhood Wellness Strategy. This is an effort to determine how to assess neighborhoods throughout the county. While we're focused on the southwest area and the special area, what we want you to keep in mind today is that the concept of the Neighborhood Wellness Strategy can be used anywhere throughout the county. There's a way to actually go in and use this in neighborhoods in any one of your districts and to look at the various aspects of what they might need. And so with that, we're going to kick off the information, and we do have a lot of materials we're referring back to. I think you have a handout there that has the PowerPoint. You also have some maps that we'll be referring to, and then you have a copy of the strategy as well as some other documents. When we get to those, we'll point them out to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Administrator, Mr. Attorney. My name is Ogden Clark, and today, as Sherry said, we want to talk about Manatee County's neighborhoods. And as she said, this is a plan that will help to work in all of the communities and all the neighborhoods, but today we are focusing on the Southwest TIF. And so just to kind of talk a little bit about the TIF and why it's important, 2/3 of the county's workforce population lives there. It's our gateway to the beaches. It includes retail, parks, 70,000 housing units. It's a big part of our county. It's very important. We also have the urban corridors. They're a major part as well. Both Cortez, Manatee Avenue run through there. We also have US 41, 15th Street East, and State Road 70 are all housed within that boundary. And so they're very important. And then today what we're talking about is neighborhoods. And we look at neighborhoods, it is home to a very diverse set of neighborhoods, very unique neighborhoods. And so on this next slide, what we did is to kind of show you just a snapshot of the neighborhoods and communities within the Southwest TIF, and to also talk about the fact that there are a lot of different types of neighborhoods within that area. There's no real one identity. And so to kind of break that down, we look at middle-class neighborhoods like Bayshore Gardens and Whitfield. Those are included in the TIF. And then we also have some low-income CDBG eligible neighborhoods, such as Samoset and Oneiko. And then we also have some upscale communities in the TIF as well, like Tidy Island and Palmasola. And then finally, we have what we're calling waterfront communities, communities like the Village of Cortez, Mount Vernon, areas out there. So we have a very widespread group of neighborhoods. Different types of people are represented, and that's great. Another component of the TIF plan in 2014, as it was made law, was that a major initiative is to work with these neighborhoods to help them collaboratively improve established communities. So we're working in established communities. We want to strengthen them. We want to work with them and get them to take ownership. And that's a major component of that Southwest TIF plan. And this is something that you guys saw in February. We talked about the Neighborhood Improvement Program, what that would look like. And one of the things that we highlighted was that there are lots of different plans already in place, such as CDBG funding, CRAs, urban infill, the comp plan. All those things have different priorities and different timelines. And so it's really important from our perspective to be able to organize those and put them in some type of a timeline, some type of organized coordination to make this effort successful. And ultimately, we need to make sure that as we go into these neighborhoods that we treat each one differently, because they are different, they are unique, and we want to be able to meet the needs of those communities. So as we start to look at this issue and we start to move forward with the TIF, one of the things that comes to mind is some challenges. What are those challenges? What are the things that we're facing as a county, as a government? And those things we've outlined in this slide. First of all, there's really no true system for coordinating the delivery of county services. We have lots of different departments. They provide services, but how do we make sure that we don't go in and do something that's public works related and pull apart a road and start doing something like that and then have to come back a year later and put in sidewalks in the same place? So we want to do it in a timely fashion. We want to make sure that we're coordinating that effort. And in order to be successful, I think that's something that we really need to do. The overall status of each community is unique, as we've mentioned before, and the neighborhood boundaries, depending upon who you talk to, may be different. We tend to think of them as subdivisions, and that's what our planning would talk about. But if you go into some of these communities, as we have, going door to door, you may ask them where they live, and their subdivision may be, for example, in Bayshore Gardens, it may be Southwood Village, but they would identify themselves as being part of Bayshore Gardens, and vice versa. They may say, this is my subdivision. So we want to make sure to be careful not to go in and put an identity on those people. We want to make sure that we're jiving with the identity that they perceive themselves as. And then we've also talked about existing plans. We did have a plan for Bayshore. We've had plans for Samoset. Those plans were developed before Neighborhood Services Department was created. And so we're talking about the Bayshore plan being developed in 2001. And so, as we know, the economy has changed since 2001. 2005, we had the recession. Things have changed, and some of the problems that were there then are not there now, and there are some new issues. So we want to take note of that and realize that there is a need for us to go in and reevaluate these communities. And finally, the most important part is to get what we want to get out of this, and that's with the limited funding resources that we have, we want to maximize those impacts. We want to be able to look into a community and say, these are the things that is going to improve the quality of life most overall for these people. And that's just kind of some of the challenges and things that we're going to try to solve by showing you guys today the neighborhood wellness strategy that we've developed. It's important for us to organize these communities and work with them, and it's important for us as a county government to have a snapshot and an idea of what public assets are in those communities, what those needs, what those concerns are. And we do that through civic engagement. We do that through public engagement, working with them, and looking at data analysis. Most important, though, as we said, we want to include citizens in that part of the planning process. And as we look at that, we need to start to develop relationships in the community. And so to talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to have Debbie go ahead and show you guys our engagement map, and she'll review that with you guys.
Get it.
So while Debbie's getting the maps that you're looking at, another couple things that you all might note too, many of you refer to us individuals, to our neighborhood connections, to the online newsletter, which has been really one of the great things. Simone Peterson, who's right behind us back here, handles all of our social media and keeping everybody linked together. And what we realized when we first started was that, you know, the best way to engage with folks was to do that on multi-levels. So not everybody's going to read something online, not everyone's going to tweet, not everyone's going to do Facebook, not everyone's going to read these documents in paper form like that we have. But that we needed to have a lot of different elements to how we communicated with people. As you know, you often see the neighborhood planning staff at meetings. They're out in the community and they're engaging in a variety of different levels. They might just be paying attention to what's going on at a meeting or attending. But Debbie's going to cover the status of their contacts over the last several months.
Thank you. And we appreciate y'all being flexible. We know we kind of threw you a curve by moving downstairs or staying downstairs, so appreciate y'all being able to adjust quickly.
And we also appreciate that on the other side.
Looks quite seamless to me.
Hey, you're doing a good job.
Excellent.
It was till a second ago when the maps weren't. I'll be truthful with you. Anyway, I wanted to share, this map is what you saw in February of this year.
The one on the screen or the one
The
there?
one on the screen
Okay.
is February. And basically what we had done here is it's color-coded. Green is the neighborhoods that we had some interaction with. Red is the ones that we did not. Blue is where we had plans, like Samoset, Bayshore Gardens. If you notice, there's a lot of red. So when we saw this, visuals are great because they really show us what is happening. We were not very happy, our team. So we got busy in trying to connect with neighborhoods and with the individuals at least having some contact. So from February, this is what we had, or January, I should say, to now.
Whoa.
You see the difference? We're quite pleased. Like I said, visuals are great.
Do you
Which
have
is
that
the
on
next map that would come. There we go.
on TV?
Well, now the question is, this is from September. of 2015, and as you can see, many of the areas have been turned green. And we have had interactions with the neighborhoods. They varied, those interactions that we have with the community. And we also went a step further, not just turning them green, but we also created some symbols to show the type of interaction that we have with these neighborhoods. Red, of course, still maintains we don't have interaction, and we hope to improve just like we did before. The blue continues to be neighborhood plans. Now the green indicates the type that we have had interaction. Now there are dots on that map, and what that signifies is some contact. We have a name of an individual that lives in an area, and we have been able to cultivate that by either they've made calls to the office that they've needed some form of assistance. So not only are we able to assist them, but we want their information so that we can contact them in an event that we need. The other is a star, which signifies that we are working with those neighborhoods. We provide presentations, we attend regularly their meetings on a regular basis, and a great example of that is Bayshore Gardens. We go out there pretty regularly and we meet with that community. Now there's a square there, and that signifies that we've made a presentation to those neighborhoods. And examples of that is like Woodfield Estates. We have gone out there. We also have been able to work with the Federation of Manatee County Community Associations, which covers a great deal. We do have a relationship with them, and we've made presentation. Now, there's also a triangle. Triangles are contacts not necessarily made by neighborhood planning, but because of limited resources, which we talk much about, there are many departments within the county. There are many organizations that we collaborate with. And then we said, well, how can we work with what we have to have contacts in the area? And what we did is we partnered with those organizations. We've even worked with some of the commissioners, and they've been gracious enough to give us information to invite us to their meetings. And we have been able to access some of those contacts. We've been able to turn them green. We also have not just mobile homes, we are aware where churches are, and we've made contacts with those churches, which means that they have a community. Sometimes they're neighborhood churches, which is excellent. We have a place where we can meet with them in the event that we have to, and we've developed relationships. Our goal, of course, is to turn everything green and also to have maybe a star where we're able to have. Now, we have learned, like Ms. Corrier mentioned as I was setting this up, not everybody wants the same type of interaction. Sometimes individuals enjoy, if they have an issue, they want it resolved, like the rest of us. But then they really want to be left alone. One avenue or one great thing we have that is a great asset in our division is the neighborhood connections, which I'm sure that you have all viewed. And people really enjoy. When we take a contact, we try to connect them with that resource, because every month it keeps the county at their site, but they get enough information and then they're able to connect with us that way. We have, like I mentioned, contacts throughout Manatee County, and we're working with them. We hope to turn the map green, and not just here. Our goal is to be able to have a visual for all of Manatee County. We have a lot of contacts within the area, but this is what we have in the southwest tip.
Okay, I'll go ahead and pick it up there too. So now what we're going to talk to you guys about and present to you is the actual neighborhood wellness strategy. And what that is, if I can get it to change here.
You're a millennium, you should be able to.
I know.
What's going on here?
It's fallen asleep or? There we go. Okay. So what is a neighborhood wellness strategy? You may be asking yourself that. What is this that we're talking about? And the short answer is that it's a tool used to coordinate county services across department boundaries to help improve communities. And what this is a proven strategy. This is not something that we pulled out of the air. We worked very hard, but we have modeled this with other communities that have been successful revitalizing, including Arlington, Virginia, a community I've had the privilege of working in. And then also Champaign, Illinois has received lots of notation for their efforts of doing this. And so this would be something that's cutting edge, something new for Florida. And we're very excited about it because what it does is it gives us the ability to evaluate communities and set projects up and then to maintain and watch and monitor those projects. A little bit more about that, and it's kind of what I just said, is that what this strategy does is it evaluates those communities and gives us an idea, a picture, a snapshot, if you will, of the public assets in that community. It gives us the ability to look at data, and we combine those things together, and it gives us the ability to prescribe things from county services to be able to help and improve those communities. And then what the strategy will also do will allow us to be able to monitor across department boundaries and work with other departments to be able to provide those services and make sure those services are getting and we're maximizing our impact. It's a 5-step process, and the first step is site selection, and to talk a little bit about that, I'm going to have Sherry talk about that first step.
Just to help you to follow along, I think in your packet you'll see a 4-page document, which is just real brief. If you had looked at that, that's what the actual strategy process is. And beginning with the site selection, as you were,
I mean, we got a big book and, we got this wellness.
take your clip off
Yeah,
I have it.
and, okay, go to about probably the middle. And it looks
site selection.
like this.
Oh, no, it's not either.
Hold on. Is it
It's
marked?
the other document.
Which other one?
You
Oh,
did- There was 2 attachments.
Oh,
on
yeah, so
the
see like
agenda.
this, you gotta pull them apart, is what she's saying. Those two.
And are we looking at the second one then?
It's actually stapled separately.
Okay, yeah.
Which one are we looking at? This one?
Now we're looking at this one.
It's the second initial, or
That's right.
it's the next document.
And
Larry.
this is probably where I say maybe upstairs we would have had that figured out better. Maybe not, but.
What page? I still don't have a page.
One.
Oh,
This is a quick guide to know what we're about to talk about, which is the strategy, a 4-page document. But in some of the things that Debbie was mentioning, how do you determine what to do when you get into a neighborhood? Everyone has needs. They're all calling you. I know they're emailing you. I know they want help. Everyone thinks their neighborhood is in bad condition based on their assessment, and many times it's an easy fix. Really, deep down, if the people really just knew who to contact and how to link up with county services, as a board, you've done such an excellent job of really providing that level of service that people need for some of the existing areas. They just don't know who to call, or they don't know really how to approach it in the right way. So those are some of the things, too, with more education that people will understand. But the neighborhood wellness strategy, starting off with site selection in the Southwest TIF, is going to allow us to try this strategy out. As you know, when we were talking with you in February, and has been mentioned, the Bayshore Gardens area was one that we selected to be our first pilot. And the reason was because there had been several studies done back in the early 2000s, and the community had come together and made some pretty strong recommendations on what they'd like to see happen. Some things have happened. They just happened by virtue of the CIP moving forward, and then a lot of things that they wanted haven't happened. They're still together. They're still a strong force. They have an infrastructure planning committee as well as a Restore Bayshore committee, and they still meet regularly, as was mentioned. And so we attend those meetings. They keep us in the loop. But the great thing about that is as we're listening now, we actually have a tool that we can put those different requests they have with. So in site selection, first what happens is determining the geographical boundary for that area and what will be given as the wellness assessment. By using this particular tool, we look at several things. We look at economic development potential and the different anchors. So economic development in the area. Now, in the Bayshore area, which is a unique area, you've got not only residential, but you also have commercial area, you have retail, you have some industry. And so the reason it was a good place to start was because we'll be able to use this tool throughout the community. So looking at those economic development anchors, you move on to that geographical location. And this was a little bit more difficult. In the geographical location, where do you get your data? You know, everything's about data. You guys were talking about impact fees this morning and wanting more data and looking at things across the board. Well, we have to make sure that the data that we're going to give to you, you can find it. People know where it is. What's our main source? So out of the areas that, our department works for you, we usually use the census data. In this particular instance, we're also using the American Community Survey data, and that's federal data that can be corroborated, that you can use, and also in instances it helps with identifying a boundary because they already establish a boundary. So we're not just pulling data from a new survey. We're looking back to see what things were in the back. Also, then you've also heard about ESRI data, ESRI community data, so you have the ability to use that as well when you're looking at your commercial areas and other things. Other interested plans, so you saw that if you have plans in existence, and in this case we do, we have the ability to use those plans. And then also voting precincts. It's an easy way to kind of look at a geographical area. So in site selection, those are the things that you're looking at, and to help you kind of identify that, you've also got some information, but you can just look at the screen for right now. I don't want to make you turn to some more items, but under site selection, some of those areas that I mentioned, like the American Community Survey, the ESRI data, they actually identify particular types of individual in the diversity that are in the boundaries, specific block groups, areas, and where other wellness indicators can be identified. So just taking an example, I'm going to go to the bottom left-hand side of this sheet, and people that might be considered interested in the great outdoors. There actually is a particular geographical area. It depends on what's there, and so what's down there? There's Bayshore Rec Center, there's access to the water, there's park area, and so you can see how that might potentially be a part of an area. We might use these types of site selector data to actually identify the population a little bit more and to help with comparisons, looking at population, looking at age groups. We were talking about millennials earlier. Before we actually look at what might be needed in a particular area, kind of break down who currently resides there, what's the age group of the people, what are their interests. That's how we use those different survey tools in order to come up with that. So it's just not a guesstimate, it's actually using basis of data. The second step is the wellness assessment, and in that wellness assessment, it's going to evaluate that data I was mentioning with the census, American Community Survey data, also looking at parcel data because each area is unique. Trailer Estates looks like, if you're looking geographically, that it would be in the area, but it's actually not in the Bayshore area that we're looking at, but it's just adjacent and they have needs. So we've been looking at it as well to see what's going on there. We've had them provide us with information about things they'd like to see. And so while you're looking at those areas, you're not just focusing only on the geographical area, but if something's touching it or impacting it. Also, of course, we've been out there, I can't tell you, endless times, probably 3 and 4 times a week, just driving around doing windshield surveys, and then looking at rating the different areas. And so as you rate these areas, there are going to be 6 categories, and Ogden's going to go over those in more detail. And this is where you're going to find out what that actual data is going to be used to do, and these 6 assessment areas will be the key for it.
And as Sherry mentioned, these are the 6 categories that we feel shows us the overall wellness of a community. So when we look at these 6 categories, they've been used in other wellness strategies, and we feel like they're very good indicators about the wellness of a community. Those are, as you see up there, housing, public safety, infrastructure, socioeconomics, civic engagement, and community assets. And the wellness assessment part is basically where we're doing our assessment. We're looking at it, and we're coming up with a prognosis, basically looking at each one of those categories, and then we're going to give them a rating. And to talk a little bit more about that rating system, we have three different ratings that we're using. The first rating is a focus area, and that would be a community or an area that county resources would need to focus to make an improvement. And I think without looking at any data, it's really hard to kind of pick a community. But if we looked at the TIF, that would likely be a community like an Onico. That would be someplace that would be a focus area where we're looking at all those different components. The enhancement area, which happens to be the rating that we're giving the Bayshore area, calls for some type of enhancement of county services. And what that means is there may be some areas that are lagging behind, and we want to target those areas and enhance the services that we already provide as a county and make sure that they're coordinated and delivered within that community. That's also an early intervention rating. That means that we're trying to get in there before anything becomes blighted. And then finally, the outreach area. And outreach doesn't mean do nothing. Outreach, what that means is that we're going to continue as neighborhood services and other departments to have a relationship with those communities. But in the outreach component, what that means is that they are needing little help in some of those areas from county services. And to give you an example, I just want to draw your attention, and you can look at the slide that's on there, as Sherry said, rather than try to find. What we've done is we've gone through and looked at all 6 of those categories, and we've given a rating for each one of those. And I draw your attention to the public safety. We look at public safety in Bayshore. They have an active crime watch. We've met with both crime prevention and with that crime watch. So they are actively tackling that issue. They're taking ownership in that issue. They're also working in the community as far as seeing crime numbers go down. So when we look at this and we look at what it was in 2001, we rated this as outreach. We feel like this is an area that we will continue to support them in. We can have MSO come in and work with them with their crime watch if they have specific problems. If they're speeding problems, we would continue to outreach with them and maybe work in a little problem area that they're having. But this is not the grand scope. This is not the big problem. As we go to these meetings, and I've had the privilege of going to a lot of the meetings in Bayshore, one of the things that we hear is infrastructure. Infrastructure was built a long time ago, lack of sidewalks, storm drainage, things of that nature, and we're hearing that throughout the community as we go around. But we've rated that as an enhancement area because of the school that is located there and the amount of kids and children living in there, looking at this community as an individual community. We feel that that is something that would need to be enhanced. We want to look at ways to get kids to school safely and work on the infrastructure repairs. Another element of the wellness strategy is this graphic here. And this is going to be something very useful going forward as you look at this strategy. What it does is it kind of paints a picture, gives you an x-ray, if you will, of the area. And it not only looks at problem areas, but also looks at the assets in that community. So for example, in Bayshore, you're looking at the Bayshore School, you're looking at the South County Library, SCF, you're looking at their rec center. Those are all assets in that community. Those are the strong anchors that we can kind of harness and use to make that community a better place. And then we also have, and we will as we go around and do this with other communities, targeted the areas where we see some problems, whether it's crime related, whether it's traffic related, whether it has to do with yard maintenance, things of that nature. So it gives us the ability to really see it and then be able to show people as well too, to see what those needs are. Okay. No, I'm good. All right. So the wellness assessment, ultimately, as we said, we're going to give a rating to each one of those categories, those indicators, and you'll get an overall rating for each community. And that will tell us the level of coordination that is needed to be able to deliver county services. The third step is going to be the prescription phase. And that prescription phase, we are going to use those ratings from the wellness assessment to prescribe services, both county services that are already happening. They're already there, they're already funded, they're happening day to day. We want to coordinate them to make sure that they're being delivered to communities in the Southwest TIF. And then we are also going to take that information and possibly have other opportunities to be able to work on special projects and things with TIF funds. So as we look at this again, the menu of county services is something that we've worked on as a team and been able to check in with all of the departments so that we have it up to speed, so that we know what each department can provide and what type of things that they can do going into a community to help make it a stronger community.
I'm going to have you go to the next slide because it hasn't actually, so they don't have to flip again. It has the menu of services. And so in talking about the menu, how do we get to the menu? Well, the menu includes all of your county services, as Ogden mentioned, organized by department. And it happens to be on the right. As you can see, it lists the different ideas. In your packet, there's more detailed information, but Mr. Groom spent a great deal of time contacting each one of the departments, and they were absolutely wonderful to get back the information about what current services are funded. And that was really key for us because we know the struggle with the budget. And at the time we were working on this, we knew that it's quite possible that there may not be additional funds put into those services, but the things that we have right now are things that people should be able to access. And so working with Public Works, utilities, all of the departments, the menu of services was created, and that would be something that would be ongoingly updated. So it helps identify those key participants, and it's used to identify and assign the responsibility. If you recall, there many, many years ago, John Osborne created the Quality Communities team, and it was in a time when we really needed to work together, and all the departments had an individual that sat on that committee, and it was a big group meeting. We met once a month, and we kind of stayed in tune with what was going on. And then as things started to change with the economy and folks dropped off, we kind of had to go back to doing things. There were just the few people to do things. And so we started to reinvigorate that Quality Communities team concept. And Ms. DeLeon and her staff, Ms. Peterson and Mr. Clark, have been working with code enforcement directly and with MSO. And I think when you contact us with a problem, immediately we look at that menu of services. You know, is it something that's funded? Is it not funded? Is it some way that we can connect people? Because again, I think going back to what Ms. DeLeon said earlier, is most people just want to be heard and they want to be helped. They may not necessarily be expecting to get a sidewalk in front of their house in 6 months, but they want you to know that they need it, or that there's a problem with the crossing, there's a speeding problem, and there's a way to deal with those things. It's just a matter of coordinating with the appropriate agencies. And so as this prescription moves on, and you're sort of getting the idea that we're kind of using these medical terms as a way to rate the area and its quality of service. Then we have the ability to determine what the main focus should be. And so the types of projects that can be utilized in the prescription services could be basic, things that are already scheduled, but they could be capital improvements. This is always another area of concern because someone gets very excited about something and it may already be in the capital improvement plan. They just don't know when it's coming. So they don't know that in 2018 there's a sidewalk scheduled for there, or there's a drainage project scheduled for there. So it's great that we can actually track that information down, work collaboratively with Public Works and utilities, and find out what's the status of it. Ivan goes to the meetings every month, so they're project status meetings, and he keeps up to date with it. Once you adopt your CIP for the year, then we sort through it, that really big document, and for people, and try to find those projects. And so this really big effort in the Southwest County area has helped to kind of pull together the projects that are online. Then we know why we wouldn't want to put a sidewalk in if you're going to plan a drainage project 3 years from now and we're going to be tearing it up, or there's lighting that's already prepared. And so we're getting close to the phase where we can collaborate with the other departments on a much more close basis. Assessment projects are something that we're going to be working on. You're going to see at the end of the presentation that's the next step, is to really look at projects that may require a participation on behalf of the neighborhoods. And as we've been going out and making presentations to the different groups, we're telling them, you may have to if you want to have a particular improvement in your area, you may have to participate financially. We can help make it happen up front, but it may be assessment over time. And I mean, I think we're getting a pretty good read from folks that there's places where they're willing to do that. There's been not very many at all that have said, we don't want a part of that. Now, a couple have said, you know, go away, we don't want to do anything right now, and so we obviously, as you can see, have plenty of other places to go, and so we've let them move on. So that special cost sharing concept is very important to achieve, and we're looking at perfecting that so that when the first project does come along, we can come back to you with the actual specifics, and that's really what it's going to boil down to. People are going to want to know. Obviously, in the cases of where we need right-of-way and things like that, we're looking for donations of right-of-way. We're not looking to pay for it. I mean, that's going to be one of the main things we're going to be saying to folks is, you want the sidewalk, you want these improvements here, the quicker you give us the right-of-way, the faster we can upfront the money to get that project going and we can get it in the ground. Projects that involve other organization with the community are important as well, and so we're trying to keep track of all those. The step number 4 then, as you can see, is the consultation area. This is where we've narrowed down and the phase of the different departments and all the tables and all the data and you know, a lot of folks are, you know, will say, why haven't you spent any money yet? But as you can see, we can get this neighborhood wellness strategy put into place, we're ready to kick off these projects. We just really need to be able to tell the community that there's an actual way of determining how government funds can be spent in the area. And keeping in mind, we're following the ordinance that was established too. So we can't do everything with these funds, but we've targeted the things that we can do. And so as we look through those, we determine who would be responsible for them. And right now, the way it stands, Public Works is really our key associate right now, because we need, when we're ready to kick off a project, we're going to need project engineering, we're going to need assessment assistance. That's not going to be happening out of our department. We're going to be overseeing the projects to make sure that everything's ready and in line, but we're looking for expertise from those folks that do it every day, and we know they're really short-staffed, so that's something that we're going to be looking at in the future that we're going to be needing some assistance with. So during that consultation phase, we're talking and we're concentrating on those projects, and we're looking at continuing the basic services. So not stopping the basic services because a project's coming, but enhancing them, identifying who's in the lead, and then getting ready to show you the timeline so that we can get things started and things can be implemented. And then step number 5 to close out on the wellness strategy is the routine checkup. So obviously we're not going to do a project and walk away. We're going to need to manage that phase, manage it all the way through the process, make sure that things are happening, and ultimately the key obviously is for that area to grow economically. So the enhancement needs to enhance the area, and we're going to need to keep track of all the other things that are going on. And in that prescription that you saw, we'd be looking at housing, public safety, the infrastructure, the socioeconomic, civic engagement, and the assessments. We're not just going to leave those behind because we did a project. Those have to be continued. We're obviously looking at measuring the success, updating you periodically so that you know where projects stand, because we obviously, it takes some time to put a capital improvement in place. I mean, we have some sidewalks, I think, that have been on the books for many years, and people would like to know when it's happening. And so our hope is that you would understand that we're your voice to let the neighborhood know. Debbie showed you that map. We have a contact. It never fails. All we have to do is tell a couple people and ask them to spread the word. And they like to spread good news, like that project's going to start in 6 months, it's going to be over in 8 months, or, you know, what's happening with it. And so they would definitely be able to help us with the progress. And this last graph, what we wanted to show you, especially since we're targeting the Bayshore areas, that through the Neighborhood Improvement Program, which we presented to you in February, and now this Neighborhood Wellness Strategy, you're going to understand that there are some elements of the Southwest County Improvement District that are very important. That's the Neighborhood Improvement Program, and then the Business Improvement Program. That's coming along. Karen is working on that, and we hope to be done in December with our overall draft of that. And we are trying to stay in line with your land development code and your urban corridors incentives so that we can make sure that we are ready ready with some incentives through the business improvement program when those changes take place. And this graph, it also shows you that in those urban corridors, we have other things to consider besides the sidewalks, the street light, the infrastructure, but it's the actual land acquisition if that's needed for a project. Remember we said we'd be looking for donated right-of-way, but it's possible there might be a particular piece of land that might be more conducive to commercial or to housing, you know, as you get farther down there. And will we want to participate with that in some way? And then really important, obviously, is the cost sharing. The 25%, 50%, and 75% cost sharing idea that we're looking at right now. All of these efforts are to make placemaking in the Southwest area important. I don't know about you, but everywhere I've been over the last year and a half, I see something I think that would fit right in South County. And taking pictures of things, and we're working with the Convention and Visitors Bureau who are leading the placemaking efforts, and we're looking at the areas down near the college and the airport as a really impactful place right now. And then lastly, obviously that's key, is transportation. And there we're really focusing on, right now, is the median area. And we think that obviously in all the studies that we've looked at and all the communities across the country that we've talked to, the most impactful efforts that have been made to do redevelopment are merely median changes. And you know, I think we have some places in the community that have done a great job. But down there, because it has been built for so long, there's a lot of concrete down there, and there's not a lot of landscaping. And so we're working with Public Works. As of May of this year, Public Works has indicated to us that there's a total of 905,886 square feet of medians, or about almost 21 acres of medians in the Southwest County area. So they've identified where they are. Those could be concrete now, they could be grass, they could also have some landscaping, but there's no uniformity. You can't really tell, you know, when you've come into one area and gone to another. And so we'd also like to focus on that as being one of the other targets of where we get started on the projects. And with that, what we wanted to talk about and make sure that you understood is completed, but we wanted to answer questions. We wanted to be help clarify the strategy or any of the other areas that we're mentioning today.
Okay. It's very clever, a lot of information.
A lot of good stuff.
Just still not sure that the medical metaphor analogy was the right one because it's so controversial. That was the only thing I kept thinking, oh no, not healthcare, please. Let's not talk about healthcare. But I get it, it's very clever, so I appreciate that. Commissioner DeSanto.
No, great information, and I know your team is engaged, and it was great to see all those green areas or green and growing. And just wanted to thank you for that. I know it requires a lot of work. It looks great to see the young faces and who are engaged in this and your whole team. And my question is, our plan and what we're going to do, and who's on first and who's on second?
Well, as we stated, the Bayshore area is the most engaged community. They have an infrastructure planning committee that's been meeting, how many months?
6 months, within 6 months.
I think they've been meeting intensely for 6 months, but for years they've had some things together. They have some suggestions. Obviously, the elementary school that's there, we've sat in the parking lot and watched the kids flow out of there into the streets. Scary, because there's a lot of speeding that goes along down there, and actually the MSO has done a great job of policing that, but they can't be there all day, every day. And so there's definitely some safe routes to school issues there, where there's sidewalks that would not only help the school, but would help other people get from that area to the college. Right now they're walking from school right down the street to kind of flow out into the area. And we would like to be able to say that that's their primary focus is looking at sidewalk in that area to help with the schools. They might want a chance to really think about it once they hear the concept and where we're at, but that's one of their main issues. And They also have a pretty long list of other, areas of other things that they'd like to see happen, some things that were in the 2001 project area. We have a little bit of funds in the budget dedicated for economic development, and so we'd also, when you hear the business improvement plan, the first part of 2016, we think there's some things that can help the commercial corridor as well.
And just to piggyback on that, I know the traffic calming, they're going to restripe 26 from Florida to the rec center. And I asked about the bike lanes, if they could paint the bike lanes green like I see in Sarasota. But also you can see how all the sand piles up on those bike lanes that the bike groups talk about all the time. The safe routes to school. The Bayshore Group identified a list of streets a while ago that Mr. Schulhofer and your team has. And so you've been able to compare that list versus what is on our CIP. So
And
are you,
we also looked back at the 2001, 2002 study that was originally done in Bayshore.
so are you prepared with a list of what can get started first or what has to be deferred to jump in line?
Well, we would be prepared to come back if the board is in acceptance of the concept of how we can kick off this neighborhood wellness strategy, and we would be prepared to come back and provide a list of priorities. The next step after that, obviously, as we said, would be if it's an actual use of right-of-way, we have some things to look at for determining if people are going to donate it. And if
Right.
they're not, we're going to have a spot in the street there where there's no sidewalk.
I know Schulhofer has gone out there and looked at it, because I think that a lot of the streets that are really in need first, we do already have the right-of-way there.
Some right-of-way has been purchased, that is correct,
Right.
Commissioner.
And
Correct.
so then we would just have to identify those areas that still need it, and then we may need to have like a neighborhood meeting and campaign to identify those that are holdouts and so forth, because, we want to just make sure, put pressure on them.
And the main thing they're going to want to know is what's my participation financially. That's
Right.
going to be the big issue.
And
so-
their right-of-way donation is participation, that's a value on their land. So I would be interested, and I'm sure the rest would be interested in getting the list and seeing how we start, and, one street leads into the other. And also, at that same time, if we can work maybe with our folks up at the, I'm still calling it the Extension Center, for Florida-friendly landscaping and showing them what we can do, rain barrels and so forth, because a lot of them don't have wells for reclaimed water or watering the lawn, so they can do the rain barrel projects. And, just start one street at a time and have little contests, and, it just, people need a little push and incentive and, a little prize at the end, so, have one neighborhood against another, because I know Bayshore groups were looking at doing the historic designation, and we're looking to do that house by house, so it can all be in conjunction with each other, but, and then a couple years ago, you started with the landscape median on Bayshore Boulevard. Needs a little help right now, but it looks a lot better. And we were talking earlier about the Keep Manatee Beautiful, the medians on Manatee Avenue. Cortez, that
They're
possibly we can all work together for Florida-friendly landscaping, so we don't have to water so much.
Yeah, and something we didn't focus on, but that I think you're also sort of alluding to, is that in some of the other areas too, you have FDOT being in control of the roads.
Sure.
And they're doing some improvements. They have some future plans. So we're trying to coordinate with them, not plan something in an area where they're already looking at going.
Right.
The other thing that is going to be really helpful if we can kick off the strategy is that we already have contacts with some other neighborhoods. So while when you start to move on with a project in one, you then are out in another area with starting the data collection. The Whitfield Ballantyne area has already put together their own Southwest TIF strategy that they'd like to participate in, and they've presented that to us. We've been to their meetings, and it's in line with what we presented today, as well as even them talking financially participating in some of those improvements. So it's really interesting to see the two different neighborhoods and how they, what they feel is a different, might be slightly different priority, but they've reached a consensus for the most part, and they're ready to move forward.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's been a lot of people that live in Whitfield that have been to the Bay Shore meetings. Some of them have investments in Bay Shore, so they're looking to make sure that their investments are safe. And so it's good that you can have that, joint participation across 41, and Valentine is on the Bay Shore side. So, and they already partner with the county in a lot of their medians that they'll maintain, or the county will maintain if they own it, and vice versa. And so there's a nice partnership going on with Whitfield right now.
And then, as we said earlier, we've been meeting with the university, we've been meeting with SRQ, we're waiting on FDOT to come back with a plan for that transfer, what we've titled the Transformational Corridor. Something I didn't show you, but we've also been working on, it's been well over a year, is a photo journal. And staff has taken pictures of everything in these areas that we're working on so that we have an establishment point of what it looked like when you started the TIF. And when we finally get to the project area, then we want to be seeing some noticeable differences so that we can also look at, is the area, becoming more valuable? Are the vacancies in the commercial area decreasing? These are things that we've learned as we've studied these other places that have similar programs, but also, what's great is that we have a starting point. We've actually even looked at Manatee Avenue. So, not to tell you that we're only down there in one area, but we've also looked at Manatee Avenue at that corridor, and staff has done a photo journal of most of the Manatee Avenue area that's in the TIF, because that's going to also move over time, but we needed a snapshot of what was going on there. And we had a lot of participation from businesses when we did our informational meetings there. So, we have lots of balls in the air, but we're ready to move forward with identifying potential projects in this first target area.
Last thing is there's a piece on 41, I think the airport might own it. It's kind of that big triangle at the north
Oh, you mean
west
the
corner.
airport? The airport?
Across from the airport on 41. It's a big kind of a park. And since there's not right now a lot of parks or dog parks, maybe we can work with the owner of that property to
That's
have
the
a
property that
community.
they took down the buildings because they were in the
Yeah,
noise
the-
impact area.
Or the flight path or something.
It's actually an area that we're working with SRQ on. There's not only that, but the sound barrier wall across the street from that on the west side of 41 is a green space that has some potential for a connecting trail from the college all the way up through. And so we've had Elliot Faltoni's had several meetings he's invited us to. So we're talking to the airport about partnering on some improvements there.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Commissioner Whitmore.
First of all, Ed, Sherry's done an excellent job. You
course she
need to be
has.
commended, no matter what project you've had since I've been here, whatever department you're in charge of, you've been a very good leader. And you guys, all the directors, but I don't think you ever get recognized by the board as much as you deserve. We all appreciate you, but maybe not publicly we say it. So you got a good team there. Don't get upset. You got a wonderful team, and you pulled together a great team. I've supported the Southwest TIF since day one. It wasn't a unanimous vote, but it came through with a majority. And where we are now in the Southwest, which is totally where we've all said it needed to be. And I'm glad we're the project part that you've identified is Bay Shore. When we're talking today, I understand that. But then I'm thinking of Ramona and Samoset and Oniko. I'm thinking of the mall area that I got all excited about being a part of this. And we're concentrating on Bay Shore, I get that. We've had people meet with us about projects that they want to have in the Bay Shore area. That's millions and millions and millions of dollars, 4 times more than what we receive in impact fees a year, possibly. And people think of this money as the golden egg. And then today, you don't even mention projects, you're mentioning what our intent was for sidewalks, lighting, revitalization. So I think, and this other project that's going, if it goes, great. But we've made commitments to the Southwest TIF, to the whole area, that we would not forget them. And I just remember sitting here on the commissioners that didn't support it, saying they were afraid we were going to concentrate, and they always use the name Lombard area, that's where we were going to concentrate. And I knew that wasn't going to be it. I kept selling it was going to be the Samoset, the mall, Bay Shore. And I just don't want us to lose sight of that, because I think the money is intended for exactly what you're saying today. Now, if we can get public-private partnerships to do other great things, great. But I keep thinking of Miss Ramona up here, and you know that. She's going to be here, remembering Samoset and Pride Park area and the mall area. So I know you're concentrating on this little bit here with Bay Shore, and we've only got, what, 800,000 or 900,000 in the TIF funds now, correct?
Right, currently. About
Currently.
$1.4 million for next
Now,
year.
so that's maybe borrow, and that gives you leverage to borrow? Is that Ed, the financial guy here?
Yes.
Okay. And also, Robin's brought up a perfectly good point. One neighbor, just like the beach renourishment, that you weren't around then, but 2 or maybe 5 people in Anna Maria held up the beach renourishment project because they wouldn't sign over their part. And actually, they had beach nourish around them. And it held it up for years. So I agree with Robin as far as we need to have some kind of campaign, but then you got other neighbors that got paid for it. So I don't know how we're going to handle all that, but I just want to know how you feel about all the little things I've said, because Southwest TIF is big. I understand we're doing this, but what are your thoughts? Because I'm thinking of Samoset, Onika.
Yeah, and before you answer that, because I had kind of the same question.
Oh,
So you
good.
might be able to answer both of our questions. And I get it that Bay Shore has a lot of work done and is farther
They're
along.
organized.
But where do we go next? How do we say how much we're going to spend there and then we're going to move on? I mean, how do we prioritize, I guess, is the question. And I guess that's probably going to come back to us, but I'm just wondering how y'all are looking at
Well,
this.
we've been talking about that a lot. We're talking about that with the county administrator, and I think one thing to know is the reason we worked on the strategy the way it is that it can be used anywhere. So even though it diagnoses something within a particular neighborhood and potentially starts a infrastructure project, it doesn't mean that other areas something isn't happening, because you're doing a lot in your CIP. And as we said, most folks don't know that. You have 15th Street that's potentially out there in the future to come along, and that's going to impact some of those areas that you mentioned. We do still have some of our funds left in the 2 old CRA areas, and those services that were provided have continued, and they still continue. So the street lighting that we worked so hard with Ramona and her group to get in, that's all in now. And
Sidewalks on.
the sidewalks, there's 2 sidewalks underway, and one of them is funded through CDBG and the other through the CRA funds, and those will be done within the next probably 12 months. So, and that will accomplish all of the previous things. So we have to stay engaged. But the other thing is to leverage dollars. Not much money out there, but with a program, an established program that you can put out there and really go out and look for funds, we may be able to do some other things. How will we select where we go next? That's a really good question. We've taken the map, we've tried to put it into zones. That's really the only way we can do it. And not to sound whiny, but I know this is going to sound that way, but there's 3 people in that division. One coming on board with the new funds. So we're going to be able to do more once we get those people on board.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my other questions too, because this is a very hands-on process, as you can see. And Ogden, you had said that this is something that maybe had come from somewhere else, this whole way to put this to do the analysis and decide what the, kind of a SWOT analysis, what the strengths, weaknesses, where we're going to go with this and how we're going to evaluate it. And I think that's great, but I can't help but think, being a planner, having been around forever, that we're talking about real neighborhood planning that takes real resources to dig in, to find out what the needs are, to try to figure out how to prioritize and to solve all these little development problems, because as you all know, development's just a series of problems that have to be solved, whether it's development in the private or public side. I mean, and so it is very, very hands-on, and so that's got to be part of our discussion too. What are the resources that it's going to take to do this? And so I don't know if we discussed that during budget time, or where we are with determining that.
You were kind enough to approve 2 new positions in this year. One is in Debbie's group to help with the identification up front, and one is in Karen's group to work alongside with Ivan and help with the actual project administration. Then also in your 17 budget, you also have another position in Debbie's group and another in Karen's. So you guys have put it out there that it's a priority and that we're going to work on it. We are looking at the zone type of process, and honestly, the best way to describe where we're kind of looking is these contacts that Debbie's group is making is who's hollering the loudest and who has the most people on board. And there are some other areas that are pretty much throughout the entire area that have asked us to do some things. But really, the ones we've mentioned today are the main folks that have really been putting the time and the effort in it. They meet. They give us their assimilated document. And so we're just going to have to continue to get out there and make the rounds and kind of come back to you with a process of where we would go next.
And just, I was actually on the board, so I'll finalize my comments. And one of the things that I've heard and I've relayed to you, because there are emails that I get, is the concern about having more focused code enforcement, having more expanded code enforcement, and how that could make a significant difference in neighborhoods. I saw that on your list of housing in the prescription list in the menu, but it is something that I think that we're probably going to have to focus on. And again, that's not a big ticket item, but it is something that it requires salaries. So it's something that it's going to require resources. So we need to see where that fits in, because I know that in terms of stabilizing these neighborhoods, we got to stabilize first before we can maybe make some improvements. And I know that's something that I've heard a lot about, that people want more active code enforcement. So, next up is Commissioner Bustle.
I could probably sum up my comments with just one word: wow. The wow factor is pretty high on this one. I know that Sherry's onto something whenever she can talk for 15 minutes and not breathe. It's amazing.
And no interruptions, yeah.
A few serious questions. You mentioned possibility, not the possibility, but a part of the strategy of going from a prescription to take a look at the CIP and figure out what's on the CIP that I guess addresses the prescription. It would seem to me that this process, this strategy could be used to put things on the CIP.
Yes.
In addition to just looking to find.
Yes. Mr. Schulhofer's group's been they've been waiting on us to get this strategy put together, because they have all of the information to funnel right into this. And as you said, the CIP, they have a lot of requests and a lot of needs, but if they know that there's a community that's come together and really will welcome the projects, it's definitely going to make a difference for them.
You were describing the process. It seemed to me that one thing that I was looking for was priorities. You didn't discuss priorities, leading, your analysis leading toward a priority that would help make a decision as to what to do next, what project to do next.
Yeah, the prescription, when we're looking at the actual, under the prognosis of the whole area, those 6 categories will lead to a priority. based on the most highest levels of need. So if you're really looking at that focus, it would pop out there. But taking an example for the Bayshore area, just to go back, again, as Ogden mentioned, the crime area, while people would want to do more, they obviously do, but it's still down 12% in that area. So we have to continue to look at that not being the number one, priority, and that, as you said, some of these other areas, sidewalks, road improvements might slow the traffic down, which is a real problem for them, as people using it as a cut through, and those are just the things that we hear all the time. And then the housing area and the code enforcement. So we try to reach that priority by looking at what the overall concerns in the area are.
Right. An awful lot of data. I mean, my goodness, it's a data-driven system that you're
It's the
working with.
best.
And it occurs to me that maybe something like GIS would be appropriate to use. Layers that you could, like you do with public works projects, water lines and
Good point. Yep.
Basement, that is a good point.
so.
All right, Commissioner Smith.
And right away, could be a layer in that system where you enter into it all the publicly owned right of way that's in that area. And then it might lead you towards some ideas on how to address right of way issues. And then, last question I have is, we know that Public Works is strained from a staffing standpoint, and when you're talking about projects and going to Public Works for help, I guess my question is, could dollars from the TIF be used to help Public Works pay for the staffing or the resources that they need?
Yes, sir. We have been in constant touch with Ron Schulhofer and his staff. They've been marvelous to work with. But it starts with Sherry and her team. And as they develop the projects and work with the neighborhoods and determine what needs to be done, they need to pick up the phone and make sure somebody at the other end of the line, that would be in Public Works, answers the phone and is ready to go. We don't want to hire those positions too soon, but we want to make sure when the projects are identified and we're ready to go, that Ron is the one that makes things happen. He's got the people with the wherewithal to make the projects happen, and we're prepared to come recommend staffing changes for Public Works to ensure this happens and that those resources are paid for through the TIF.
Well done. Fantastic job to all of you.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a wonderful presentation, a lot of information. I commend you for putting the data together and coming forward with it. I have quite a few questions. I'm not going to ask all of them up front. I will start out with that, who's going to implement the TIF district and run it? Do we have anyone? I remember when I was being briefed on the TIF, they say out of the funds that's collected, it'll be someone that actually oversees the TIF and running and implement the plan.
Yes, sir. It's overseen by our department. It's in the two groups that I mentioned. This upfront assessment process is under the neighborhood planning group, which is Ms. DeLeon's group, and that's where there's a new position coming on board. As we speak, there's it for this year and another one next year. So you'll have a focus of staff for that paid out of the TIF, and then the other implementation for the redevelopment concepts for the business side is done through Ms. Stewart's economic development area. So we have our team of our two lead division managers, these two, and then, as Mr. Hunsaker mentioned, we also need to have a great alignment with Public Works so that we can work together as a team to get those projects going.
Okay, you answered my first question. TIF districts and CRAs and special tax districts, when you're dealing with the private sector and businesses, you normally have someone in a TIF who's responsible for the day-to-day implementation of that. So you're splitting it into two different departments. Who will make a decision then? Did it come back to you?
It comes back through neighborhood services, and we, and I'm familiar with what you're mentioning. When the community redevelopment areas were in place, we didn't officially have one individual. Mr. Groom was the CRA coordinator, and he worked on all of the projects. However, as a department, so it's not to take administrative dollars away from the projects. We didn't assign just one individual, but I know that that's the concept, you know, in other areas how they've done that. But here at the county, we worked as a team under the neighborhood services department.
Okay, so let me get to the point. That's why special tax districts do not work if you have layers of government to keep private sector from coming in, to identify issues, to work with government. If I come to this TIF district and I want to make a business decision, I may want to come in with a $500,000 plan. I'm not going to talk to different layers of government. I need one person to deal with, and that person goes to the county administrator. I'm not going to wait until we have meetings and workshops and things like that. So my question is to the fact, and more to the county administrator, because I thought we was going to hire one person to implement the TIF district. And we're not doing that. We're hiring staff to implement the district. You're very busy. You got your hands full with a lot of stuff. We talk about a lot of opportunity if this works. But normally you don't have layers of government in TIF districts or CRAs. They be able to make a decision in a week or 2 weeks. You can go to the county administrator. For example, if there was one person overseeing this TIF district, and it's a big idea comes, like what Milton Little has, for example. He would go straight to that department, that person, he would go to the county administrator, and then go back and forth with that private investment business or whatever it may be, to strategize and go back and forth. A person that wants to invest is not going to go to two different individuals in the same department. Then they come report to you. Then you go to the county administrator. It's very difficult for that to take place. And I question that. If we have already $800,000, I was told that we was going to have someone to run this TIF district. But we're hiring staff. And then it has to go through these two different components, department heads or whatever it may be, staff, then it goes to you, then it comes back. You may have 50 people that want to do business with this TIF district in 1 week. They're not going to wait for that to take place. They need someone to go to, then it goes straight to him so we can make a decision before they bring investors in. That's my first problem that I have with it. That's why I don't, with all the due diligence, I don't see it working if you don't do it any different. Layers of government run people off who got money not to invest. My other point is that the fact that what we put together, I haven't heard anything talk about the land that you have there that's vacant, that may be code violations. I know you talk about code enforcement and things like that. Traditionally, the county has been in the business of not obtaining property. Well, you can't move away slum and blight if you don't obtain property and sell it to the private sector to clean up the community. So when the tax dollars come in into this district, there's properties there that's foreclosed on that may have tax liens that we should be identifying to sell to the private sector for development. And it may be a pattern of putting a whole bunch of properties together. I just don't know. But that person who runs this has to be flexible to get to the county administrator saying, this is what we got going, not meeting, we'll get back with you in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Don't see it happening like that. I really don't. I just want to put that on the table. You did a wonderful job. But TIF districts fail when they set up like we're setting this up with not one person that they can go to. If a guy flying in, he goes to this person, then he's got to go to this person, then they go to you, then they got to go to the administrator, then you got to give the deputies. It's layers of government. People who want to put money in this county is not going to do that. My other thing, I think it's a wonderful plan if you have somebody spearheading running it. They can report directly to the county administrator when he gets a phone call, he or she gets a phone call. Because they're not going to sit here and wait when they find out you got layers of government it'll interfere with what's taking place. I haven't seen anything with Melton Little, no more than diagrams. But what I see, what he has is a vision and something that can improve development in that area if it comes to pass. I'm not saying I support it one way or the other, but he has the private sector ear. And when it comes times for other people to come to the table, they have to go to someone or call someone to talk to who has authority to go to the county administrator. That's his decision. It's hard for it to work like it's set up. And this is a plan, and this is the 2002 plan, north of the river, that was put together, that the county was supposed to hire someone to run it, and they never did. And this is the documentation showing that it will not be implemented unless someone runs it. It was 2002, most of us wasn't here, none of us was here on this board. It never was put in place. It was adopted by the board. No one was ever hired to implement it to the public. And this is north of the river, a large section, documentation, talk about sidewalks, ditches, they talk about slum and blight. So my point is that it's a good plan. If we put someone in place to implement this plan, that you can come down here, make a phone call with them, knowing that they don't have to go to 2 or 3 levels of government. And so I want to put that on the record. I really have serious issues because I was told, and maybe they changed, that we're going to get someone to run this out of the money, that you can make a phone call and open for business. Now I'm hearing we're hiring the staff, and you're going to oversee everything. Now you got another responsibility.
Well,
And so,
I would like to hear from the county administrator, because what I'm hearing from Commissioner Smith is that this was basically a CRA-type plan that needs implementation. But I don't think we have a CRA-type plan.
I'm not talking about CRA, rather TIF or CRA.
No, what I'm hearing from you, and I'm hearing that you're thinking of this different, that it's like a CRA-type plan that needs to be implemented, but I need to hear from the county administrator as to.
No, TIF
difference.
districts have people that run TIF districts. Normally you have a CRA overlapping TIF. This, what I held up is it's the Manatee County plan for north of the river adopted by this board in 2002. That was supposed to be implemented just like what we're saying here that never materialized. And my concern is, they never hired anybody to implement it. So it never happened.
Well, they didn't have any resources.
Well,
Well, it was
Yes.
2002, whether they had resources or not, I'm just saying.
if I could, that North River plan is probably no different than the 2002 Bayshore plan. Plenty of planning, no implementation. I suspect it was because there was a lack of appropriation in order to put any money in place to hire anybody, and no design or plan to fund whatever these people came up with. And that's a detailed plan, just as the Bayshore plan from the early 2000s was a great plan. What happened? None of us were around for that, so let's just put that one to rest. Where we are is today. And today, there are no levels to get to the county administrator. Every Wednesday, 12 department directors get together with the county administrator, and we have a team approach to running this government. Everybody is involved in making the decisions that get before this Board of County Commissioners. It's not just one person, because if we left just one person to do it, the other 11 would go off and do other things. We hold everybody accountable for making this plan work. So when we get together, anybody that's received a phone call, anybody that knows anything that's coming forward, we talk about it on Wednesday. We assign responsibilities. People have tasks. We move as a team to solve this issue. It's public works involved, it's utilities involvement, it's property management involvement, it's the technology department with GIS, as you indicated, their role in this business, human resources and making sure the people are in place to make this happen. Everybody has a piece of it, not just one person. We're not going to have a repeat of what happened in the early 2000s. You've heard here today that we're moving. We're prepared to make projects happen. That was the purpose of the overall TIF. In 2002, north of the river, there was no device to fund it I would suggest, looking back on the records, other than to carve out a piece of property taxes, which would mean you'd be taking money from something else in order to fund it. There was no strategy for any of that. We have the strategy, we have the TIF. The TIF will be the tool that we use. We'll manage it appropriately. We'll report to you as often as you want us to. We've indicated 2 times this year of where we are. You saw the map with the red turning to green. Within a year, you'll see the advent of projects coming to fruition, and they'll be on the board. We'll be amending the CIP to include those projects, be it sidewalks, neighborhood markers, stormwater projects, street lighting projects. All of them will come forward as Sherry and her team begin to work with the neighborhoods and continue to work with the neighborhoods. We bring Public Works on board, property management. Again, the key to how we do this here is a team effort with 12 people every Wednesday talking about this.
Madam Chairman, there's not an employee in government that can circumvent the department heads and go to the county administrator about anything. My point is, in this capacity, we talk about so much money and so much opportunity and a chance that someone needs to be spearhead running the TIF. And that's what I'm saying. The fact is that the department heads that we have are not, right, what I was told is overworked. We have, the mayor just said it himself, we got a shortfall of employees. What I'm saying is the fact that it is opportunity. I don't believe it'll work unless it's done. We can sit here and see, does it work a year or 2 years from now? Because private sector is not going to deal with levels of government. They want someone to talk to and then decide if they want to invest, if they want to put money in this TIF district. That's all I'm saying. So who's going to go out there and identify the properties or the code stuff like that? You need one person, that's all they do. They report and let us know what's taking place. They use public works, they use code enforcement, whatever it be. But their job is to make sure this TIF is successful. And that's the only thing I'm saying. If you think it'll work like it is, so be it. We've already done it. I'm just putting it on the record. I have every right to do it. I've been dealing with TIFs and CRA for almost 20 years. There's reason why they work, and there's reason why they don't work. There's a reason why the landowners north of the river are calling me to meet with me about all the land they have, because they've been told stuff over the years that never come to pass. So I'm just putting some on the table. As Commissioner DeSabastino say, don't kill a messenger.
No, that was Carol.
No, I think that one was Robin.
So,
Maybe.
Well, and I hope
I'm just trying to cut off issues that may come down the road, and we say, well, we didn't figure this out, we didn't figure that. The bottom line is you can talk to any economist or any developer.
Yeah.
When I come in and I want to revitalize, I don't want layers of government.
Well, Karen Stewart does that, and I hope you will hear from Karen, but other commissioners want to talk, but I wanted to say Karen Stewart does that. She does it very well. She has done it for many
24
projects
hours.
that have been extremely successful, and I assume she will continue to do that. I'm going to go to, I've got a bunch of commissioners all signed up. Commissioner Chappie, you're next.
Oh, thank you. I had just a couple things that stuck out immediately, and I think it's great stuff. It was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. You know, this neighborhood wellness strategy has been a while in the making to try to get it right. And the things that stuck out to me was the fact of partnerships between departments. And I have known that has gone on throughout the years that I've been here, but with this strategy and the availability to collect all this data and information about all the different neighborhoods and then the outreach to the different communities, you know, it is about that communication. And to let the neighborhoods know that there are opportunities out there, there are resources in your local government, and you're there to help guide it, direct it when it's needed, take charge when it's needed, back away, like you said, when it's requested of the neighborhoods. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I I had a couple little quick questions on the right-of-way donations. Why, you didn't say easements. I know a lot of times what we've done in the past is tried to let people know that you're not gonna lose your land. We went with easements instead of donations. That way they could still use the square footage for their overall coverage of their lots and things like that. And I was just curious as to why, is that a problem, or?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's a possibility
Good
as
idea.
well.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Practically speaking, the property owner doesn't view it any differently. Whether they give you a
Right.
deed or an easement, they don't view it any differently.
But they get the
They're
square
losing the
footage.
usage of the property.
They can calculate it.
Well,
like,
if it's an
Well,
easement,
we're
they can
talking
still
about
use it in the
well-established
square
neighborhoods
footage of the structure.
where
that they're gonna-
density for future development is not really a consideration.
True, that's true. That's true.
Cities
And
are a
where
little different.
setbacks is not really a consideration. These are well-established neighborhoods.
Right.
So,
Well,
I mean, I don't want to throw, cold water on the suggestion, but, having practiced in the subject area of eminent domain for decades,
Right.
trust me when I tell you, the property owner views it no differently. Whether they're signing a deed, a warranty deed or an easement deed, they view it no differently.
well, thank you. And you'll wonder why I don't talk as much as the others.
That's why he doesn't
No,
talk.
I hear what you say. I'm just
Poor boy.
making it a little light. Yeah, I hear what you say. I know in the cities it was a little bit easier because the land is extremely valuable out there, and the right-of-ways are very narrow at times, and we need to get into and it's important that they have that extra square footage that they can count, even though it's being used for public purpose. So that was my only point. But I like what you've done here. I like what you've said. I like the strategy ideas, and the opportunity. And I guess Karen will be the one to get into that with the business improvement plan. You just briefly mentioned it. That's coming down the pike. How much farther down the road, which could open up doors sooner rather than later for opportunities for private-public partnerships, such as some of the things that have been mentioned today. I would think, to see whether that would be these different ideas and opportunities. And it's also showing that the residents or individuals in these neighborhoods are taking an interest, are willing to put their money where their mouth is and their energies, as Bay Shore has done for many years. So when is that going to be coming down?
Yeah, I was going to mention with some of the things that Commissioner Smith was pointing out, those are in the business improvement program as well for land and, potential acquisition. And it's in draft, and we're going to finish up at the end of December and take it to the county administrator. So in the first quarter of the 16, you'll get that as well to complete it. Our goal was to make sure that the business improvement program was in line with the urban corridors, and to have incentives so that when all of that comes together, those 5 areas, that you have something to offer in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, Commissioner Baugh.
Just a couple of quick questions. So we've got almost 800,000 in the TIF today, is that correct?
That's right. It's
Amazing.
projected to be about $1.7 million for this year that we're in now.
Or this year,
total.
16? Or- yeah.
And I know we talked about medians and sidewalks and all of the wonderful things that I think should be taking place. But I'm curious, I didn't hear anything about lights. And lights, of course, are very important. I know the crime rate in Bay Shore has gone down, but that being said,
Street lighting is also a priority. It's on the last sheet that we did. The only caution with that until we build up some funds is that, paying for the ongoing, operating of the lights.
which would be something the neighborhoods would.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Just figuring that assessment out and how that would go. But streetlights is definitely in that
Yes.
top tier of items that would address crime prevention. And it's, again, another thing that can help a lot of neighborhoods, even the more affluent ones or even the lower income ones that might not have any lighting at all. So it is in that top infrastructure category.
All right, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, and next up, Commissioner DeSabatino.
Great discussion, and, a lot of things were done in the past, and didn't.
Or not.
Or not done in the past.
Yeah.
But we didn't get here overnight, and it's not gonna be resolved overnight. And it's gonna be a long road, but I know when, companies or communities or want to come here, there is one-stop shopping. They make an appointment either with Karen or they make an appointment through John Barnott, and they have all that pre-app squad, kind of, everyone's there at the same time, the same page from the different departments. And so, because I've sat in on one or two before they applied, and, it was really impressive that they didn't have to go to one floor and then another floor and another floor. It was all prepared and it was all organized. So, you really do have it together. Let's look at it. The glass is half full. We've got this money to work with. We've worked on a plan. And I see this also as a huge turn of events. In 2010, when I was first running, 3,000, 4,000 homes in 34207 were in foreclosure.
Right.
And that was huge, and it was a huge impact on the Bay Shore. That's why we kind of adopted them and moving them forward. And
But it was also because they were there and ready to go.
right, and they had their study,
involvement.
yeah. But here's where the private businesses can partner with us, because they can help either promote, like the one car dealership does the median, and they
Fox Chevrolet.
yeah,
And Cortez.
and so the different businesses can adopt Bay Shore
Right.
and help with their improvement projects. We're talking all morning about new homes and new construction and everything, but here's a complete economic engine for Manatee County is in the renovation business, where all the local businesses can increase their business with more jobs for the local economy. Businesses, the rehab, painters, roofers, electricians, it can be a big, like, Project Bay Shore, like you have Project Runway, Project Bay Shore, and have a documentary. And as you're saying, you're taking pictures along the way, and, all those HGTV shows where they do all the renovations. Maybe we can have our own little TV show going, who knows?
That's
But,
a pretty good idea, really.
but, the county can definitely help in the way of supplying lists of partners that are vetted, that we know that are viable partners in our community, and then economies of scale, where everyone on the block needs new landscaping, and we've organized a group rate with
Go to
one
jail.
landscaper, everybody benefits.
Get plants in the jail.
So, it's just, I think it's going to be a great shot in the arm. And once you see, again, one area grow, people are driving around, they drive from the airport, and then the minute they hit Elcon, it looks beautiful. And not to leave out, the minute you cross into Lakewood Ranch with that gorgeous landscaping. I mean, I remember when I came down here, that shopping center, Cooper Creek, was horrible. It was a disaster. And we just drove in it just Saturday, and it's just gorgeous. And it's viable and it's booming. So, we're going to bring that to, South County. So I just think it can be a really big partnership, and we can't lose sight of the big picture. And let's just be positive and have a positive attitude, and just see how we can all partner together for the better good of the whole community. Thank you.
Next up, Commissioner Whitmore.
Robin and I are having a love fest today.
Oh, my goodness. We have to get our picture on Facebook today.
For the record, we have to do a selfie
And
or
Larry.
something to put it on Facebook. Okay, I want Charles to feel comfortable, because we worked on this for like a year or so before
But
this last election.
Samoset is his district.
Yeah, and Ed mentioned it, but I don't think it's clear enough for everybody to feel comfortable. You're adding staff because of this and the other areas. You are, Sherry, and I know that. But when he was saying that, I knew exactly what he talked about a business, exactly that Karen and you get together that day and you go to Ed. And I've seen it happen, I've heard it, I've seen you guys in his office. My office is right next to his. And I use the example of Air Products, 67 days for a permit.
Yep.
And that's because, and I know on Wednesdays when you have your department head meetings, after you do your thing going through the whole agenda, I see that you break up into little pods of issues that you have to work on. So I would like to hear from you as a director and Ed to assure all of us that nothing's going to change. It's going to actually help it probably go faster so because of your staffing constraints. And you do need a leader, and I think really the leader's right here, Sherry. She doesn't do it, but she keeps it all together, and she has a good working staff, and Ed has the trust and both vice versa of each other. So I just want to hear from you guys to rest all of us assured, not just Charles, but I want to make sure it's going to continue, and is it going to get better by adding these positions?
Yeah, I think a good example is just talk about 2009, and Karen's going to do her economic development work session with you as soon as we get done here, and you're going to see the process, and it's going to exactly what you said, how the rapid response process was put together. But in 2009, it's exactly what Commissioner Smith was talking about. A person could come into one department and spend months, weeks, years talking to one department, and it really was just that the department didn't know where to send the person. But when the county administrator took over and the Board of County Commissioners, your predecessors, put together the Jobs Now team in 2009, the whole goal was to streamline that effort and to make no wrong door, but to have one point of entry. And that's where Karen's position came about. And she does that business rapid response. And yes, it took a while to build that team, but that was because the county administrator designated his team, the department directors, to make economic development a top priority in the organization and to make it rapid and to make the main thing, which was was to have the answers for the companies, not to give them the runaround, even if it was a no, we can't do it answer, the quick response that they get. And so, as he mentioned, as a department, every Wednesday after the meeting, we put forward what's called a mini meeting. If we need to pull directors together, if Mr. Barnott and Mr. Bishop and myself and Mr. Schulhofer are all working on a project, or even sometimes Mr. Hunsicker, Charlie, we all come together. We get the time with Ed and Dan and Karen, and we brainstorm it, and then that goes right back out to Karen, or it goes out to Debbie or whoever in the departments that are working, and then it starts to happen. Is it perfect? No, sir, it's not, but we're working, we continue to work on it, and I know Karen would tell you that most companies that work with us respond that it's an unbelievable change, but it's really the consistency of the answers. And the best part about it was by having the team effort, everybody on the team knows the answer. Not just one person, and a person can, come and go with the organization, or even leadership can, but it's really that Manatee County government across the 12 departments knows how to deal with the companies and how to work with them, and that's been the change, and so far it's working well. Not to say that we don't run into a few bumps, but we do always have the access to the county administrator. Karen and I met with him on Monday in a 20 minutes notice on a project. And so that's been a change that we've had.
Okay, well, we've had a lot of discussion. I still have a lot of people on the board, but we've had a lot of people sitting here, and some people have things they have to go and do. So at this time, I'm going to open up public comment. Yes, but we've had a request because Melton has to leave and go to a hearing, so I'm going to open it up and let them talk, and then I'll let you respond, okay? So,
Milton.
Just 2 minutes. I have an emergency.
3 minutes.
he's got an emergency hearing, so we're going to let him speak, and
I'd
then
be
we'll
in a
let
suit
Larry
and
speak.
tie if I didn't. It's good to see you back, Commissioner. You're one, as I told you at the scholarship dinner, you're one of my personal heroes.
Aw.
So it's good to see you back.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. I guess now I'm the president of South Park Athletic Center Foundation because we had an election and I was nominated and was elected.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So on behalf of myself and my 29 board members, and as all of you know, there's a sports facility advisory impact and feasibility study meeting with the school board, with county officials, with community people, and with business people Thursday. And each one of you that can come so we don't violate the sunshine have been invited in different time slots, which I hope is going to happen. But sometimes I'm a little lost on this TIF. I first want to say that at no point have I ever said, nor will I ever say, that I expect the TIF to entirely fund South Park Athletic Center, which is the park that I envision being built where MTI was formerly located. That's never been the goal. We've never sought to take all of the TIF funds. We've only sought to participate in the TIF funds through this project to some extent. When you're talking about neighborhood wellness, you're talking about taking care of your children, you're talking about taking care of your seniors. To some extent, you're talking about taking care of your animals. There's a dog park at South Park. There's gyms, there's athletic centers, there's pools, there's walking tracks. There's all sorts of facilities that tie into the wellness piece. But when you did the original plan, you listed in the plan itself the criteria for the projects and what projects would receive prioritization. And the number one top at the top of that page was biggest bang for the buck. That was the number one thing you listed. And then you listed partnerships with the community, you listed community involvement, you listed support to the businesses. I wish I had the list. I left it at home. I'd read it back. But it's in the document itself. I followed that document and I blew it up. And I had it when we had our board meeting, and I have it and I carry around in my car. And it seems like what I'm hearing is we're getting away from all of that. And the other thing that concerns me is we're telling these people that live, and I'm talking about Onico, Whitfield, Bayshore Gardens, all of those areas where you're at least a 15 to 20 minute drive from GT Bray. I mean, I've heard people say there's a park in South County. You know, as I'm scrambling out the door to get my 12-year-old to play soccer at GT Bray, if I don't leave 20 minutes before the time he's supposed to be there, I'm late. And I live in El Conquistador. There is no park in South County. And until we have something that's a catalyst to bring back South County, then once we have the catalyst, all these other things fall in place. I mean, once we start to have less than 24% home ownership in that entire area, and we have people moving in that are going to stay 5, 10, 15 years, that are going to raise their children there and send their children to schools, that are going to participate on the SAC communities, that are going to create support groups for parents. Until we get that going, you know, once that catalyst occurs, then we have ad valorem taxes for roads and streetlights and other things like that. But to look at that area of the county, entire area of the county, and say to them, hey, we're going to create a special fund so we can put in a sidewalk or a streetlight for you. Isn't that what they've been paying their taxes for all along? They haven't. They haven't been paying for sidewalks and streetlights. There's no money for anywhere else. All that's coming from impact fees or developers. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's part of the misconception, I think, of what's happening in South County. You got people that are saying, I've been paying my taxes all along. You got the Bayshore group that's saying, we've been in here for years saying we want sidewalks and street line. They're kind of getting angry about it, you know. And then you've got me saying, look, if you're going to do anything to revitalize the community, you need a catalyst, you need a project, you need a jump start. So I'm not looking for all the TIF funds. South Park Athletic Center is not looking for all the TIF funds. We just want to be included in the consideration. So when we get our feasibility impact study, I hope it's received by this board. I'm very hopeful there'll be a joint workshop between this board and the school board so that we can discuss what's going to happen with this piece of property, because it is blight right in the middle of Bayshore Gardens. I mean, right in the middle of Bayshore is a huge 20-acre piece of property that's blight. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, it's blight. So I thank you for letting me go early. I apologize for jumping in front of anybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Malcolm.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bustle.
Any other public, oh, okay.
Mr. Bustle wanted to get an opportunity. I just let him jump in. So, Commissioner
So
Bustle,
you opened
did
it
you
for
want to
one
respond to
person?
Commissioner Smith?
Oh,
Okay, well, I've cooled off a little bit, not much. I guess I'm going to try to let down my friend Charles gently and attribute his position to his youth and inexperience, I suppose.
he said youth.
If there were a big, long list or even a short list of projects that came before this county and didn't, for neglect, let's say, didn't get evaluated and hopefully funded, then his argument might hold water. But on the contrary, there's a whole long list of projects that have come before our Economic Development Division and have resulted in increased jobs and economic benefit. And they have not suffered from a lack of leadership, which is what we're talking about. leadership and organization. You need to sit down, I think, with Karen and go over the success story that she has to tell. It's awesome. I don't know what the count of jobs is today, but it's, last time I looked, it was over 5,000, or close to 5,000. 4,000. Okay,
She's
well,
on deck.
it really is a modern-day success story because, you know, when I first came on this board, our primary focus was jobs, jobs, jobs. I remember Gwen Brown, that was her battle cry, and we adopted that, and that's been our guiding light ever since, and it's worked. And combination of Karen Stewart and Sharon Hillstrom and a lot of other people, we've really lit a fire in economic development in Manatee County. So I don't think there's any danger of a project being neglected or not given its just review because of the organization or because of a lack of leadership or access to decision makers. It's not happening.
All right, Commissioner Chappie, you're up next.
No, you just left me off, I think.
Sorry.
I'm
I do want to get to other public comment. I just want to make sure I gave Commissioner Bustle a chance to speak. And Commissioner Smith, you're on the board. I don't know if you want to respond, but I want to also have an opportunity just to say something real quick based on what we heard. And I think this is a misunderstanding because we hear it all the time. I pay my taxes. Why don't I get sidewalks and lighting? Why don't I get these things? Because they're not in the budget. People have a base misunderstanding of what our budget goes toward. The biggest part of our budget is public safety. That's what the vast majority of our money is going to. Lighting is paid for by independent districts. Sidewalks there's a teeny tiny fund that we do sidewalks, safe routes to school. It's what?
Couple $100,000 a year.
$100,000, and that's it. So I don't know how, but I think somebody does need to have a meeting with Mr. Little to explain this because we have a disconnect from what I just heard, and you don't need to go down the line with thinking that, you know, this money is not supposed to go to sidewalks or lighting projects. That's what our budget pays for. Not really. So we need to have that discussion.
If they want to follow the advisory committee that you've just authorized, that's when, how we fund this government and what we fund, the funding sources we have available and what they're used for. There is a disconnect because the vast majority of the public doesn't understand that your budget is really a plural. You have roughly 150 different funds. Each one of them has to be balanced separately. And then when they're all balanced, we add them all together and create a budget. But the money in one fund can't be spent in another fund. And that's the disconnect. How can we be building 44th Avenue and we can't repair a road that we have today? Because 44th is paid for with impact fees, and a road that's deficient today needs another funding source. Another funding source doesn't exist. But it's that complex issue of understanding government funding and the funding sources we have available and what we use them for. For the most part, property tax revenue goes into the general fund with general revenue from fees and charges, and that funds the operating budget. It pays for the staff, it pays for the electric bill, it pays for the water bill, it pays for the day-to-day expenses of the government. Building something new, whole different discussion. And that's the challenge people have, is how would we build a facility or participate in the building of a facility without some revenue source to make that happen, independent of property taxes?
Commissioner Smith.
Yes, Madam Chair. You know, dealing with the sidewalks, people are asking that question. They may not be aware of it, but, you know, I live in the city of Pamela. We got sidewalks around our entire block.
Yeah, you do.
And maybe the budgetary decisions that we make need to be included in that. I get phone calls from Bay Shore and everything dealing with lights and sidewalks. on a routine basis. So whatever they don't understand, that's fine. But get back to the point. I met with Karen Stewart and staff. I understand what their responsibilities are. What I said, I stand by what I said, of the fact that you can do your own study to find out that TIFs and CRA normally have an executive director or a director running these to make decisions to get to the county administrator. There was no question on what staff don't have the ability to do. I think I made it clear that they're overbroad now with work. When you deal with incentives, there's segments of incentives that you pay every 90 days, once a year. So someone has to manage the incentives that you put in. Someone has to actually go out there and monitor these different things on a daily basis. It could be staff. Then they come back to exec director or a director. I mean, there's a reason city government has an executive director running their special districts or a director so it can make it more smooth for private investment and so forth. But once you start implementing this into the community, there's going to be paperwork. There's going to be all kind of decisions have to be made. There will be partial payments, whatever you think may take place, what you put into the plan. I've talked to them. I happen to go to the classes. Mr. Groom be to the classes. He's the only one in there not executive director when he was going, and it was the executive directors and directors. He come on behalf of the county. Everybody in the department head. And they tell you why it's best to have that and why they fail and why they don't succeed. You had 2 CRA districts. It wasn't the fact that they was bad. The fact that you had red tape. You didn't have an executive director or director. That's the only thing I'm pointing out. And I think Commissioner Barr has said it over and over again. And we keep repeating the same thing, we're getting the same results. That's the only thing I'm saying. You ladies do a wonderful job for Manatee County government. And I've met with you, and I'm just putting out why these situations take place. And so that's what the situation is from that standpoint. You can do your own research on that, dealing with TIFs and CRA and special tax districts. Normally, there's somebody in charge that can move things smoothly. And the fact that you have meetings, I know the county administrator meet on Wednesdays. I get that. But the fact is that when people need to make serious decisions and you got multiple issues taking place, county administrator has a lot of responsibility, and so does Sherry, because she wears many hats. But thank you.
Okay, I am going to open it up to public comment at this point. I know people have been waiting, and those folks are waiting, so I just asked Robin to go ask them if they want to make public comments, so she's chasing them down to see if they want to make public comment about this. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward?
Well, while we're waiting,
Mr. Gibolino will be glad to step up.
while we're waiting, Sherry, at the time that you and your team undertake any activities in the neighborhood of my youth, Garden Heights, it appears to be just inside the northern boundary there. Let me know. I'll roll up my sleeves and help in whatever way I can. It is a very, very tired neighborhood that needs help. Yeah, I grew up on 30th Avenue West, just a little bit west of 14th Street, and it's a tired neighborhood.
Thank you. All right, thanks for being patient. Mr. Gibolino, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, public comment, I'm glad you got us up there.
Well, she said she was.
I know, I got a three
Not like
o'clock
you're
school board workshop that I'm
thumbs.
late for.
Okay.
So, I've got all right, my name is Glenn Gibolino, I'm taxpayer, Manatee County. Mr. Smith, you brought up some great ideas. A point million, you got it exactly right. Here's my spin on that. I think every commissioner in their district should be the point person. You have a business individual that wants to come and open a business in your district, you go to that Wednesday afternoon meeting. You sit down with the 12 department heads, with the business owner, and get your answers at that time. You know, if a business owner comes to the county and they want to open a business, what happens? They call the departments, and then they go in these little silos for months and months and months. And a prime example is the marble school, the marble pool. You know, they tried to get lighting in. You first heard about it last week because they were frustrated. They couldn't get anywhere going through the legal department or the lighting department or the recreation department because there weren't any funds. So I think the commissioners need to be the point people to do it that way. That's my spin on that. As far as the sidewalks, you're right, Betsy. It is a safety issue. You spend all this money on safety, make it a safety issue. You know, I live in New Pierce. We had dirt roads. You know what we did? We petitioned the neighborhood, and we all agreed that we're going to pay for our half of the road. That was many, many years ago. To this day, I'm still paying for it. But you know what? I wouldn't want it any other way. I don't know why you don't give the communities the opportunity to fund their own sidewalks.
They do.
But we do.
They do have the opportunity.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, then maybe they should be pushing a little more. All I'm saying is that if they want sidewalks and the funds aren't there, then they need to step up to the plate and make it easy. Spread it out 15, 20 years. 20, 30 bucks a month ain't gonna kill nobody. But if they have the enjoyment of that sidewalk for 15 or 20 years, everybody should be happy. The other thing is on the safety issue, how about, you know, Windmill Village? Robin, that's your area, right? There's been 2 crashes that went through the fences there, 1 2 days ago and about a month ago. Is it a big deal to get a guardrail up there? I mean, is that part of the state's responsibility or the county's responsibility? I don't know, but
Is that on 63rd, you mean?
yes, 63rd. I mean, it wiped out a trailer. You're lucky nobody got killed. I mean, I don't think it would be a big deal to put that. That's it. The same thing with the lights. If they want the lights, I think they should be able to step forward and do it. So appreciate your time, and I'll see you Tuesday. Thank you.
Other folks would like to make comments about the Southwest TIF.
Thank you. My name is Bob King. I live in Bayshore Gardens. I have a couple comments. The study in 2001, the only thing that's changed for the good is there's fewer dogs running around.
Good.
We still have the same issues. We have more issues now. And the thing that you could do to help us is give us a minimum standard for codes on houses. If there has to be paint on it, if there has to be a roof on it, if there cannot be broken windows. If we, the citizens, were armed with that, we could make that happen. We cannot. I have gone out and mowed yards because the county couldn't get to it. I do it because I want my neighborhood to look better.
Right, good.
But I need to have your support to be able to make my neighborhood better.
Are you in charge of Neighborhood Watch? Crime Watch?
No.
Okay.
I was in Crime Watch. I'm currently on the board of trustees, but I still mow yards.
Thank you.
I remember, thank you.
You know, our property maintenance code is in place. It's, you know, that ordinance is less than a year old, and I think it covers the very kinds of things that the gentleman was just describing.
They charge the property owner, yeah.
That's what I thought too. I don't know, you know, Robin, maybe, I don't know if he's
They wanna
aware
get
of
If you
it.
can direct me to that, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Okay.
Robin,
That
I
might
think
be a good thing
enforcement
to have
falls
at your
under
next
Mr. Barnott's
meeting,
department, I
discussion,
believe.
The property maintenance code or something, I don't know. They aren't aware of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to address the board on the issue? Now is your opportunity. Thank you for being patient and sticking around and coming back, so we could hear you speak. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and Commissioner Smith, you're first up, unless you already spoke. I think I didn't take you off the board. I'm going to go to Commissioner DeSabatino and let you think a little bit.
Just,
I'm sorry. I
just
think I
real
did-
quickly, I just pulled up someone's tax bill in Bayshore Gardens, for instance, and then I pulled up my own just to compare. And the taxpayers, in my opinion, get a lot of government for their money.
Yeah.
You know, we're paying for all the roads, we're paying for the beaches, we're paying for the parks, we're paying for the libraries and everything else that you do. And for, you know, $800 a year, that's a lot of government for the money.
And that includes a deputy showing up at your door when you call.
Exactly.
A paramedic showing up at your door when you call. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Right, you're right. So,
I'm sounding like a politician here, I'll shut up.
oh, you running for office soon? So,
My district.
so, and when you compare what you're getting for all that and then if you add up the fees for Swift Mud, Mosquito, WCIND, and fire districts, I mean, that's like a quarter. So you're paying for a lot of government and a lot of services. And so when someone says, you know, I want streetlights or sidewalks, you know, it's to retrofit, everybody's gonna have to have skin in the game. And I say this all the time, it just boggles my mind that in my community, we have sidewalks and streetlights, and people will walk in the middle of the street. And I stop and I'm like, this is a senior community. In the morning, when the sun's in your eyes, if you're heading east, and in the evening, we can't see you walking there. And they'll walk 2 and 3 abreast, and I'm like, we pay a lot of money for sidewalks to maintain them. People are screaming for sidewalks somewhere else, so, you know, you can't fix people's, but when it.
Gated community though, right?
It's a gated community, they're not children walking to school, and that's different, but, you know, when you have it, please use the sidewalks.
Well, you know, and Commissioner DiSabatino is absolutely right. I mean, if you compare.
This is a love fest today.
You compare the tax bills.
I'll go out for a trip.
The tax bills for a homesteaded property in some of our older neighborhoods, the one we're trying to fix, doesn't compare to one in Lakewood Ranch, which has all of these amenities that they're paying for.
Pay for them.
Through a CDD.
You pay dearly.
And it's just reality. You know, it may be politically incorrect to say, but it is reality. They're paying a much smaller tax bill in some of our existing residents.
And they never paid impact fees because they're
They didn't pay
older.
impact fees. They're not paying the CDD fees. They may live in a neighborhood without sidewalks and without streetlights, but it's because the neighborhood was developed back when that's the way we did things in Florida. You know, you ever been to Northport? Nothing like just putting a street down and building homes, you know? It's just, I mean, it wasn't that much different a long time ago in Manatee County. You did the bare minimum, then build homes.
I don't have
So yeah, so they're lacking, and that's where a lot of the tax dollars go to retrofit, quite frankly, when it comes to stormwater. I used to say this when I was on the Minnesota Basin Board for Swift Mud, and we did all the funding. I said, this is just a great example of where new growth is subsidizing existing growth, because he'd be building stormwater retrofit systems in the urban area to try to fix areas that didn't have any stormwater at all. And that was paid for by tax dollars. So I know, again, it's not something that's politically popular to hear, but it is something that we're trying to retrofit with this TIF. That's the idea, to try to improve what's going on in these districts, in this area, trying to put in the things that'll make them desirable neighborhoods to live in. We know that we have millennials that want to live closer in town. How do we make it safer and nicer for them to do so? That, to me, is the big picture. And we've been laid out kind of again, I'm not sure about the healthcare analogy. I'm not sure I like the whole
don't know that I like
wellness
that
and
either.
prescription. It gives me a headache, but,
It's aspirin and call me in the morning.
call the doctor. DiSabatino.
No, but we have examples of like Palm Air and other areas, even in District 2, that have gotten together for lighting projects and have their separate MSTUs. So I'm confident that once we get this going, other people will want to jump in the bandwagon and say, how can we get this in our community, like today? And we'll already have our formula. We've invented the wheel, and we'll be able to take it and kind of juggle each community differently, but we'll have a basic prototype of how to take our show on the road. I was in a meeting not too long ago, and someone brought up the subject of solar lighting.
Probably Glenn.
No, it was Roger Gale.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what meeting we were in.
Facebook, he said.
Oh, yeah,
that.
about
It's on
Solar
Facebook.
street lights.
Posted on.
So I didn't know if you've explored that and the cost.
We have them in Braden Beach.
The cost versus, once you
I
put
think
them in
it's
the
so-
community, then they don't have to keep paying for the electric bills.
Saying.
And Glenn would love that, right?
Mr. Schulhofer's group they have a comparison of that too sometimes.
Oh, it came up at the Bay Shore meeting. Yes, yes.
We installed solar streetlights in Bradenton Beach. And I believe the funds to purchase those solar lights were used
State.
from
CRA
CRA
money,
funds.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
good planning.
Good project.
Create those other revenue streams.
Admitting that publicly.
There you go.
You're allowed to.
You're still, statute of limitations is still applies.
It happened after I left.
All right, Commissioner Chappie, you're actually up next.
Well, yeah, and Robin touched on it. With this strategy, this neighborhood wellness strategy, as you said at the very beginning, this isn't really, it is about the Southwest TIF, but it's also setting up a process for all communities in Manatee County, everywhere. And as you work through this, you guys are going to be getting, not that you're not good at it now, but you're going to be getting better and better at it. You're going to have, your eyes are going to be open to other opportunities. The word's going to get around. The business community, other neighborhoods are going to say just what Robin said, you know, what can we do to make it happen here? What can we do to make it happen in our neighborhood? And I've talked with Sherry about a neighborhood on the north side of Manatee Avenue. It's not in the TIF. But the neighbors want to do some extra landscaping, the median area, and the system, it just hasn't worked so well for them to get themselves organized and work with the county, and with this will help open up other avenues of opportunity, I believe, for them, and Sherry knows exactly which neighborhood I'm talking about. So I think this is a very good thing. I know it is a very good thing, so I look forward to us moving on this.
And Commissioner Bowe.
Oh, jeez. I just wanted to say, unfortunately, back in the day when some of these neighborhoods were built, it wasn't, at the time, sidewalks weren't put in, lights weren't put in. I mean, that's just the way it was done at the time. So, and then people like to bring up like out east and some of the newer developments like Lakewood Ranch. And I mean, I can tell you, we pay, in CDD fees, where I live, I pay almost $2,500 a year just in CDD fees, which it takes care of the medians and so forth. So yes, they always look wonderful, but it's because the neighborhoods pay for them. So I'm excited about getting this program started. I'm glad that you are getting a little bit more help. You've needed it for a long time. And in taking with what Commissioner Smith said, I think it's something that we're going to have to watch and help you be able to do the best job that you can do. So it's going to take us all working together to make sure that we do that.
Okay. Well, we have beaten that one to death. Let's move on to the next part
I
of
was on the
our
board.
work session. Huh? You're not on the board.
Oh, you were supposed to come back to me, remember?
Yeah, you said you
Oh,
were
I'm
taking
sorry.
off the board to
Push
give
the
them
button.
time to
Commissioner Smith.
think. And
Board.
Yes, dealing with the sidewalks and lights. My neighborhood is over 50 years old, about 75 homes. We have sidewalks and lights. We didn't,
In the city.
no, that's the city, thanks to Commissioner Smith.
Gwen helped.
We have, the city paid for sidewalks and they paid for the lights, the city of Palmetto. And Madam Chair, I think you met with Shirley Gruber Bryan and Alan Tusing concerning as soon as you leave the city, there's no lights, and there's 60 to 70 people committing crimes and selling dope all night long because lack of lights. They're starting to spill over into the city of Palmetto. Robberies, dope dealing, purse snatching, prostitution. As soon as you leave at the limits, because there's no lights. Lights is directly tied to public safety. You should have got some from FACT to state that, and the national, that states public safety. The concern neighbors have across the whole county who have called me when they talk about lights and sidewalks, that it's cheaper to put lights up than $100 and some thousand per deputy to patrol those streets. You had a business, I believe, off 14th and the Trail say, I wouldn't have all this prostitution if I had lights up. It's killing my business.
Italian, yeah.
So the issue with lights is a public safety issue, and this board needs to deal with it. The city of Braden's dealing with it, and the Palmetto has dealt with it. So it's beyond the fact of old neighborhoods. If you go over there now, you see sidewalks throughout the city in the black community. And lights are coming up because we don't have the response of law enforcement anymore that has to go down there and make arrests. It's mostly domestic situations. So we don't have that crime in those communities that I mentioned to you. You can't get in Jackson Park and go to selling dope and drugs in that neighborhood. They go right around in the county and starts to sell. And Madam Chair, when you were Coach Bellamy, that's what they're talking about. People are afraid. So we can keep saying, you need to do this and do that. The sheriff come right back and say he needs $3 million for deputies. So where does it stop? That's what they're concerned about. They call me from Lakewood Ranch, Bay Shore. Commissioner, you're right. It's cheaper to put the lights up. Because we don't want to pay for that law enforcement over there in your neighborhood. But now we're disputing the fact that we don't need lights, you put them up. So you can't contradict yourself like that from that standpoint. No, the issue is about I paid for my lights.
Well, everybody always has paid for their lights.
Well, my neighborhood is 50 years old.
Yeah.
And the question was that we got old neighborhoods, they didn't have to pay. Well, we paved everything. Roads are paved, lights up, and we got sidewalks.
And you pay for that in the city. You pay
We put it in the,
and those taxes.
but we put it in it. We put it in the budget.
Yeah.
So this is what the residents from the county are saying now, and we don't have that crime like we had before in that community. But what I'm saying, these old neighborhoods, we need to do a better job with the housing, but there are sidewalks. And lights are coming up to deter crime now. Now we don't have to continue to hire police officers to sit out there and park.
Good point.
I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, it's a good
We
point.
could have raised taxes and do that.
Well, and I think we got one light out of that meeting because the city agreed to put one more light up. I know they did. We got one light out of the meeting, and then they went forward, and I said, come on back, and we gave them a map. We even said there was possibly some CDBG money that might be able to help. So I don't know where they went from there. We were
that's-
hoping to hear back from them about putting some lights up, so we did have a productive meeting, but I haven't heard anything.
And that
since.
street that they're talking about is one of many that the sheriff has to patrol constantly and park people out there to deter some of the dope dealing and drug dealing. By the way, when they leave there, they go and break in someone else's house across the county.
It's a good point. And it's certainly something that will probably come up
They're
as we
selling
get to the
jewelry, they're
budget.
selling TVs around there, and it's in the unincorporated county. So when you leave the city, here's the county. Now, they come complaining to Commissioner Smith and Palmetto and me that the county to address that road now. Because they can't, we got too much lights around there for them to sell drugs on the corner in Jackson Park.
Well, it certainly is something that I'm sure we will bring up again when we come to the budget session, and we will be hearing from the sheriff about additional revenue, and I guess that's something you're gonna bring up, is, as we talk about how we pay for government, that's undoubtedly something you're gonna bring up, that it's a offset, as you said, from, paying for additional sheriff. What is the price of paying for lighting versus additional sheriff, and we'll see how that discussion goes. Anything else for the Southwest TIF? And so we can move on to Economic Development Program. Karen Stewart?
Good job, guys.
Yeah, good job.
So the plan is everything's moving forward, right? I always like to have a wrap up. Okay.
Do you want to take 5?
Yes.
Yes, I just said, yeah, we'll take 5 minutes. That works out.
It's a pleasure to be here today. I hope you all received your notebook
Thank you. That was
that
very nice.
we provided on
Good.
Friday. And I was just going to take not a lot of time, but just quickly run through it for you. In section 1 is just the summary of economic development incentives. This is something that we often use as the first document when a company calls us and is interested in what we have to offer. And then behind that in section 1 is our much larger incentive plan that was adopted in 2009 by the board that we currently use today. And you'll notice that it's pretty much the same as it was at that time. In section 2, I created a flow chart for you to help you see how complicated sometimes economic development can be. There's a lot of steps to it. There's a lot of people involved in the steps within our department, and I'd like to introduce some of those folks to you quickly. Bruno Kapasinskis is our new business resource manager. He's out in the TIF, meeting with businesses, providing technical assistance and outreach, doing surveying, finding out what companies need and connecting them to resources. He's also going to be doing rapid response in the TIF, and we are currently offering rapid response to all TIF projects. And we've been successful in working those. Ivan Groom, our community redevelopment coordinator, also working in the TIF. but paying attention to the old or our former community redevelopment areas, making sure that the plans that we have adopted and the ongoing projects are continuing, and he monitors all of those. And then he does a lot of planning, mapping, using GIS. He's our fax guy, and he's very solid in that. Today, her first meeting, Deidre Green Larkin, she's our new administrative assistant in economic development.
Your first meeting.
Welcome.
Second day on the
Second
job.
day on the job. And we welcome Deidre. And then we're supported by the entire Neighborhood Services Department as well. Elaine, our compliance coordinator, Luce McQuiston, our fiscal manager, and her staff, Randy, who review all of the invoices that come in for economic development and make sure that we have, provided the performance information we need to send over to the finance department so that our companies can be paid. Also, there's been some talk about Sherry today, but she's our absolute leader, mentor, and wise counsel for everything. And, one of the things that Sherry has taught me over the years, and that's ingrained in all of us in neighborhood services, is we're servants of the people, all of them. And we work with every business and every customer, every person in the neighborhood the same way every day. And we're at your service. That's our approach. So I don't want to go over that whole flow chart in the interest of time, but you can take a look at it. If you're interested, I'm happy to come up and talk to you a little bit how it works. But the bottom line is, no matter what is available for a company, whether they're eligible for incentives or rapid response or whatever, we always connect them to the resources they need. We are always looking at how to retain and expand that business, and we're always making sure that they know who to call in county government as their single point of contact, and that's their economic development division. Also, in section 2, you'll find a chart that Bruno put together for us that shows the incentives that are available in the counties nearby us or that touch us. And right now, Commissioner Benak, I'm not doing the PowerPoint yet. I'm just going through the book real quick. And you'll see that we are like many of those counties and cities, but we actually have a few more X's than others, and we have a very strong economic development incentive program. In section 3,
I think this is very important because we get a lot of discussion about the cities and what the cities do. And the fact of the matter is we're funding economic development to a higher degree than the city of Bradenton and the city of Palmetto. And maybe you could explain that a little bit more.
That's exactly true. I'm going to tell you in a few minutes, I'm going to review our program for you and where we are to date, the incentives that we've set aside. In the cities, they don't have an economic development organization within. They work economic development the way that we used to, where businesses come into the planning section and they receive information that way, and the planners and the building and development departments in the cities are actually their economic development arm. Each of the cities has CRAs, in the case of the city of Bradenton, the Downtown Development, the CCRA, and the 14th Street West CRA, and they have their adopted plan, and they have incentives for businesses in those areas based on their plan. In the city of Palmetto, again, they have a community redevelopment area that's very strong, that has a community plan that has recently been updated. They've enjoyed some success in their CRA, and they do have some infrastructure-based incentives and ways to help businesses within the city. But our economic development program is far more broad. We have the ability to help far more types of businesses. Our scope is larger. But I would like to say that whenever there's a project in the city, we're right there to lend assistance, to help with city projects, to provide our expertise, and we work together, have worked together on a number of projects that are located in cities.
And for example, like It Works. Maybe you could explain that just again for clarity of how it was.
So It Works Global, which is a great company. Several years ago, It Works contacted the Bradenton Area Economic Development Organization, and they were interested in moving from up north, from Michigan to Florida. And so we worked with them over a period of more than a year, and we provided an incentive package. It included QTI and EDI to move their corporate headquarters to Manatee County. And they did locate, you might remember, their office on 64. They also purchased the Stony Brook Golf Course at that time. And then they grew exponentially. So they went back to the EDC and said, hey, we need to move, and we'd like for you to help us locate a building to move to. And so the EDC contacted the cities, and it just so happened that this great piece of property was available in the city of Palmetto. And so the company moved over to the city of Palmetto with a lot of help and assistance from the city and from the CRA, and enjoyed incentives from the city of Palmetto and the CRA as well. And that has been a fantastic project for our entire community. I mean, that has put us on the map in a lot of ways, the city of Palmetto and Manatee County, because It Works has more than 90,000 distributors globally.
Yes.
So everybody knows where Palmetto and Manatee County is due to It Works, all over the place. And actually, Sherry and I traveled to a conference recently, and we were in Anchorage, and there were people there who were It Works distributors and knew where we were from because of that. So that was a great story. In the city of Bradenton, we also worked very closely with the Hampton Inn. It was a brownfield. We did a customized incentive for the Hampton Inn, and I'm happy to say that they've concluded their billing. They billed us over a 3-year period for their incentive. We also worked with the city of Bradenton on Motorworks Brewery, and I'm sure many of you have been to Motorworks or been by. It's a
Friday, it was beautiful.
it's
Friday.
And the great thing about Motorworks is it's in a great location, zoning-wise, because they're able to have their brewery and serve their beer, but they also manufacture it there. And it was a great win for the city and also for the county because, again, everyone knows about Motorworks. They're serving their beer brewed right here in the city of Bradenton and in lots of places in Manatee County and far beyond.
And they have a beautiful beer garden outside, which was part of the Village of the Arts Walk Friday night. People could, which I didn't even know, you could walk in the back there, and they had a group that was touring that's appearing at the Manatee Players that sang there, and they had the Village of the Dead thing. It was, you guys missed out. It was an incredible time Friday night at the Village of the Arts and Motorworks Beer Garden.
You didn't call.
I didn't go. I did. My sister always takes a picture and puts it on Facebook, so that's.
Well, we certainly view the cities, both the cities and then the cities on the island cities, as well as important economic development partners.
Okay, thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
So in section 3, in the beginning, the first page, you'll see our update that you've been sent numerous times. Our goal is to send you this update every time a project comes before the board for approval and you grant approval. Then we'll update it for you. We'll send you this document, and you can stick it in your binder so that you have it handy. And right behind that in section 3 is our PowerPoint for today. So when I get into the PowerPoint, you can go back to section 3 and find the information. Section 4 are some of our documents that we use. Our application is located there, and right on the front page of the application tells the eligibility requirements for our incentives. Typically, these companies have to be targeted industries. They can't have to apply for the incentive before making any decision to come here. They can't make any announcements or purchase property or anything like that. The incentive has to be an inducement and has to show that it's going to make a material difference in the project. And we like for them to use local vendors. We don't require that, but that's put on here. And so the company signs that they understand the eligibility requirements. They tell us about their number of jobs they're going to create and their capital investment, and they tell us about the wage of the jobs here. And this is where we begin to work with the company to help them understand what incentives they might be eligible for. Behind that document, you'll see the document with the yellow stripes on it. This is our jobs roster that we require as part of the application. This is where the company shows us the types of jobs they're going to create over the 5-year period that we're going to work with them on their incentive. And this is helpful to us in several ways. One, it helps them count the jobs and understand the average wage, and it helps us see what their plans for hiring are. But it also provides an opportunity for the EDC to connect the company to CareerSource Suncoast and other community career providers to make sure that we have these types of workers available for the company once they locate here. And in the back of that section is a brand-new document that you haven't seen before and that we actually have not used yet. This is a letter from the board chair. And we plan to use this letter when a company signs their agreement.
What, number 5? Where is that?
It's behind number 4. It's the last page in section number 4.
Oh,
We have letters that we use. We send them a letter when, after you approve their incentive, we send them a letter to let them know that the board approved. We tell them in that letter that they're going to need to sign an agreement with us within 120 days. And so when the agreement gets signed, then we'll be providing the letter to the board chair for their signature. And the letter invites the company to come and make a presentation before the board. It lets the company know that the Board of County Commissioners is here to serve them and to go to their events and to continue a partnership to help the company in the local community. And we're hoping that this is going to provide a vehicle to ensure that companies know where their incentive came from, which government or which organization is providing an incentive, and it's just another piece of communication that we have to develop our relationship along the way. In the last section is Florida Statute 288.075. This deals with confidentiality for economic development organizations that exist in county government or in governments. So in order for us to be covered under this statute, there has to be a defined economic development organization within a government. And this statute is here for your perusal, and this is why we use project names. And in our new application, which is in your book, it tells when the confidentiality is dissolved. It's dissolved within 1 year of the day that the customer signs the request for confidentiality if they don't extend for the second year. It's also dissolved when an agreement is signed or when they make a public announcement. Other than that, it's completely secret, all of their proprietary information, and that a lot of that information under the statute still remains confidential after the project is announced. So now, if you don't have any questions about your book, we'll go on to the PowerPoint, and I'll breeze through that for you and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing.
Can I ask one quick question before we go on to that? Great job, and I know you excellent service. We have, the taxpayers voted in the tax abatement, and is that offered up as options as well? And can that be added to your matrix, or do you already do that?
It should be on our matrix. In our summary, yes, it is on the first page of the first section inside of section 1. It says economic development ad valorem tax exemption. It's the the fourth bolded area.
Okay.
It is in our toolbox, and it is available. There are some strict guidelines based on statute for getting tax abatement. Also, it's a process that's held in the public view. So it's the company would have to agree to go public with their plans, and it's done in a public hearing. Also, companies can apply for tax abatement after they locate here. There's a time frame. So they could actually get up and running and then apply for tax
But
abatement.
isn't it either or? If they get incentives, QTI incentives, then they can't get abatement? It's an either or?
It's possibly an either or. Again, we customized all of the incentives based on the number of jobs, the wage of the jobs, the capital investment, and all of those things. So based on the information that the company provides to us, we would have to have our talk and think about what we could offer. Generally speaking, for most companies, it's either EDI or QTI, because whenever there's a QTI, the county pays a 20% local financial support. So we're already buying in to the state's program. So we might do a QTI and a TIFI, a tax, why can't I say that today? A transportation impact fee incentive along with their QTI.
Got it. And in your travel, so I'm glad to hear we have somebody whose show was on the road and visiting businesses. What do we do to inform the local businesses who are in business here that if they're expanding their workforce, how would they be able to benefit and participate, and how do they find out about?
We have a brochure that we've recently developed that Bruno is using when he goes out to visit with companies. We have the ability, in fact, about half of our projects that we've provided incentives for to date are expansions, and the other half are companies that locate here. So we work with companies to expand and locate, and that's just part of our talk and part of our packet that we give to companies when we go out on the road.
And possibly when we're doing a lot of this TIF, and then try to encourage businesses to participate in the discussion. I know you've reached out through a lot of your workshops. Offering up this opportunity to inform them again. There's a lot of times Chris Kraft is hiring tons and tons of people, and they may not know, or they may not take advantage of it, but maybe there should be a mechanism to recognize companies that are expanding that aren't utilizing.
Well, actually, 2 points on that. One is, Sherry mentioned that we're going to be getting another redevelopment coordinator. That person will be doing a lot of community meetings with businesses, and will be, bringing out information and sharing it in a forum type setting rather than one-to-one. Also, though, the county staff is really fabulous at everything related to economic development. And when a company comes in for a pre-app meeting with the planning department, or if they bring in their building permit, or they're just calling to talk about, we get tons of internal referrals from the staff here in county government. So,
right, you're on to it.
We're on to
And then the last thing, I'm looking at Charles Smith, is regarding the affordable housing, and maybe we need to examine our tax abatement and see how they could benefit if there's a developer that's coming out and going to be building a lot of affordable housing, and he doesn't qualify for a QTI. He might be able to benefit from tax abatement, and also when the property conveys, it's an incentive for people to buy into that area, because there's going to be like a ramping up of the tax structure over like a 7-year, 10-year tax abatement that runs with the property. So those are all things we need to talk about when we move forward.
right, again, that is something that you could address at the work session that's coming up for affordable housing. As far as the tax abatement, that is in statute, and there are certain types of industries that are eligible for tax abatement. There's certain numbers of jobs, there's a certain capital investment involved, and typically housing would not be eligible for the tax abatement that we currently have.
Is there another mechanism for?
Well, there's been specialty areas, essential service providers get a priority, disabled folks get a priority. So there's been precedent that there can be some special things designed, but again, it has to be paid. If you're talking about an incentive for an impact fee or something like that, it still has to be paid from somewhere, and so that's something you could talk about. It would depend on the kind of program that you put together.
Okay, because I know in a lot of other areas where they have, revitalization going on, they do have tax abatement stretched out over a period of years, so maybe that's something we can look into as far as on the state level is concerned. Thank you.
Charles.
Yeah, following up on what Commissioner DeSabatino asked you about incentives, is all incentives confidential?
Yes, sir.
Every last one of them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And you can't give her a couple beers at there and try to get the information.
Well,
you can't.
Tried that many times.
I know, you can't.
And the reason I asked that question is that, and I think Commissioner DeSabatino was touching on it, but I want to take another step. if someone has a business already and want to expand or relocate, do we have incentives for that?
Yes, sir, we do, and we also treat those projects confidentially as well. So if a company that currently was here in Manatee
And
County.
I'm talking about a small company, 50 employees, 30. I'm not talking about the
Yeah. A lot of our companies are small like that. There's only a requirement for a minimum of 5 new jobs
Okay.
for our incentives. Typically, though, they're in a targeted industry. And some of the smaller businesses, it's difficult for them to qualify. I was going to touch on this in just a couple minutes. For example, retail, restaurants, and service providers generally will not qualify for our incentives because they won't be able to reach the required wage for incentives.
And the reason I asked that question, for example, Manatee Rural Health moved their corporate office downtown Palmetto. When we found out they were going to build a new corporate office, we enticed them to move downtown. They purchased Bank of America. But they bought about 90 jobs downtown that we didn't have. Now, Bank of America leased from them. But we gave them $50,000 to convince them to do that. And we was looking at the gas, the food, the restaurants, and so forth in that area. Armstrong Plumbing has relocated with incentives. And there was already businesses in place. It wasn't confidential. I know it's a statute saying is.
The reason it's not confidential in the city of Palmetto is because there's no economic development organization there.
Okay, that's why I'm asking this question
That's,
now.
that's the
because
reason.
I've had business owners in the county who say, you know, what about me? I've been here 30, 40 years. I want to expand. I may need to move my business. What do we have in county government for me to relocate? My business, I already got 35 jobs, but I need a better building, or I'm not happy with my landlord now. And, you know, so I got a lot of phone calls about that.
We do that. If you would refer them to me, or I'd be happy to talk to you about them, but we help businesses who are already here look for additional property, find a new building, then we bring out our pre-app squad, I like that, Commissioner DeSabatino, our squad, to talk to them about how that building can work for them. And then if they're eligible, then we also get an incentive application from them. Sometimes they're not eligible. Sometimes they don't want a cash incentive because they don't want to turn their business information over to the county for their performance requirements. So it depends on what the business wants, but we certainly work with them. We work with many small businesses. On the chart, I guess I didn't get to that chart, I'm sorry. In section 3 in the back is a chart of all the companies that we have helped and that are currently active.
3.
Yes, sir. In the back, very back of 3, it's the last page. It's a spreadsheet, and it tells the companies there. And while there are some large companies here, there are also some very small companies as well. For example, Han Power Boats has less than 20 employees. Thatcher Chemical has 5 employees. So there's plenty of businesses on here who have small numbers of employees to start with.
And my other question on there, do we have any matching money, for example, that bridal shop on 8th Avenue on the corner there? They bought that building, they invested $50,000. We reimbursed them $25,000 for them to make that location on that corner. Do we have anything, matching money, anything with small businesses that want to take a dilapidated building and, you know, take it to the next level?
Well, we're going to be bringing you a program like that for the TIF. Those types of programs, commercial matching grants, are common in community redevelopment areas. And we had some of that in the budget for the former CRAs. So in the former CRAs, there's some money available for that. When we bring the business improvement program forward to you, you're going to see some business opportunity grants and some ways that we can help businesses similar to what you're talking about. At the moment, we do not have that.
Okay, my last question, Madam Chair. I know that we created a partnership with Habitat for Humanities, and I think you have that program here now, where and the banks also was deeding homes over to you.
Right.
And then you were kind of like issuing someone to upgrade them. one thing on 10th Street West in Pelham, across from the packing houses, when a house is deeded to us, the homes along that road, we're getting them to deed that to us because we want that commercial corridor off the, make it commercial corridor. And we put them in them homes and getting them to sign them properties over us, and we demolishing them now so we can resell that to private business on that right-of-way there on 10th Street West, across from the packing house. I think we need to look at that. That's, people's living in it. They was free and clear. They signed it over, and we put them in one of those houses, and they signed that over because we want to resell that to commercial. And it's a bad, it looks bad to the city where it's located at, but we're moving that off the road by getting them to deed it over, and we putting the family in a new home. I think
That's one area the Board of County Commissioners has not delved into being a property owner. But, that program that you're suggesting is, something to discuss, but we have not had success with getting that kind of a program where we would actually take possession of someone's property.
Yeah, and that's moving slum and blight. The houses people's living in them, but it wasn't the standards that we liked. But it was right on the borderline where we couldn't do anything. So when the banks deeded those homes to us, we went and talked to them, they signed it, and we put them in that home and demolished that, they signed it over to us.
Yeah.
And then we would resell it back to put it on the tax roll, so.
We actually did do that. We actually did that in a CRA. It is now going to be built into a school. The county acquired that property with the idea, initially, in the CRA, of having it for economic development. However, the neighborhood wanted a community center. And so the county went down the road of trying to make it a community center, which was really kind of questionable for meeting the CRA regulations for economic development. And as you all know, this board, sitting here, voted to sell that to Visible Men Academy. And now it's going to become their school. But that was initially land acquired for economic development, but it
I
morphed.
think you have great opportunities to do that.
Into a great school.
Because there's more land in the county to do that, even in your TIF district over there with houses and stuff with banks. And how we got it started, we started cracking down on the banks with, they wasn't taking care of their property. And it was cheaper for them to deed it over to us than to pay the liens because we wasn't budgeting anymore. And so they started, said, we'll deed it over to you. And we took it and put a family in there. And then that old house that we really didn't like, we needed that anyway, we started replacing them. I think we've done 2 or 3, maybe
Did
3.
you do that with CRA money, or you
We
did,
did.
right?
We did.
And that's a good point. I mean, in the TIF area, land acquisition is a potential area.
Right.
But just in the unincorporated area where we don't have a special district, we use general fund dollars to purchase property. But yeah,
In your
there's,
TIF district, you can identify,
Yeah.
I think Commissioner DeSabatino was talking about how many foreclosures, you can identify some houses over there where if you put it out there, deed it over to us, you can move some slum and blight houses and people and relocate them. I mean, that's what I'm saying. And that's a great program right there. From then, like the chair was saying, you did that over there. And one thing, we got a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. When your great guy back there was running, did an excellent job when he came to us on Ogden with it. He was running it. And one of the programs we did with the elderly, you get a lot of elders calling you.
Yes.
Well, what we did, we got free labor from Habitat for Humanities, the high schools, football players, basketball players. Every time we had one, they brought like 50, 25 people. They volunteered. And what we did from that standpoint, we bought the material for it, but Habitat remodeled, even roofs and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we got the information. He knows it. He knows the program because he was overseeing it. But those are some things when we have elderly calling us all the time, and Habitat, they limited what they can do, but 3, 4, 5 houses a day would go a long way with people who just can't afford to do it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's keep going on with economic development if you want to make your presentation.
yeah.
Not a millennial. All right. All right, so your PowerPoint's in section 3, and we're just going to quickly review your goals that were adopted with our program back in 2009. Again, we use a multifaceted approach, working with community partners such as the Bradenton Area EDC, Port Manatee, the chambers, all our local universities, the school districts, and our internal partners, which I've mentioned already in county government. Expansion and retention of current businesses and relocation of businesses to the area are a priority for us, as well as business scoping. This is what we call the pre-app squad, the business scoping meetings, well, for now anyway. And we provide development-related information upfront and quickly to help businesses make a case for locating here. Then we have our incentives for targeted industries and special areas. We have the ability to customize them, and we're going to provide a report on the outcomes of that program today. All right. Another one of our goals is workforce. This has been a major focus for us in the past year, working with, again, partners, because we just have to collaborate for success in this area. We've been working with the school district and Career Source, again, the universities. Our library is an excellent asset for us with their job fairs that they've been having. And we're looking at attraction of millennials and making connections to jobs at businesses that are expanding and locating here. Our business-friendly government goal, this is something that I think Commissioner Smith was alluding to before. This is where we have our dedicated staff who are available really at a moment's notice to meet with a company and talk to them about how we can help them and how we can provide solutions for them to locate here. You know, sometimes in government, there's the tendency to say, well, we can't do that because of the land development code, or we can't do that. But what we try to do is we try to work with companies and we tell them what they can do. And that's appreciated, and it makes a difference for us here in Manatee County. Our Southwest TIF is another focus, another goal. We've talked about that with the neighborhood wellness strategy today, and we're going to briefly touch on the business improvement program in just a couple minutes. But we're looking at neighborhoods and the business community, providing outreach and community engagement to make sure that what we're providing is what they need. Housing, which has been talked a lot about today, is another important focus for us. We want to make sure that we have housing for everyone that's affordable. Again, the work session is coming up, and that's something that's always key in our minds regarding companies that locate here and where they're going to live. And even companies that expand need a place for their workers to be. And then finally, the Florida International Gateway, working with Port Manatee, their master plan, their port-related development. Currently, we're providing rapid response permitting for 4 port projects, the expansion of Berth 9 and the new security gate and those kind of things. So we're very closely related to what's going on at the port.
Great.
Right, and so this is just a little overview of the economic development program, rapid response, which we already talked about, scoping, and we develop a customized team of staff for every single project. So if it's a small business on the corridor, there'll be a certain group of people who go to the meeting, and if it's a large project like Air Products, then there'll be lots of people who go to the meetings. We also, in rapid response, collaborate with other community partners like DEP and SwiftMud, all the fire districts work alongside the health department, work alongside us for rapid response. And we have our local incentives, our EDI, which is our job creation-based incentive, and then our transportation impact fee incentive as well. So those are our 2 local incentives for companies. And then again, we're the business liaison in economic development. Our companies in the community, they don't have to figure out which one of the 1,600 or so employees they need to call here. They can just call our division, and we will direct them to the right person or connect them to the right person to make sure that they get their the answers to their questions. And again, it's a multifaceted approach. We work with all the chambers, all the business organizations, all the education providers and workforce to make sure that we have a comprehensive approach to economic development and helping companies want to expand and grow here.
When you said the education, you just might want to address really quick to let Commissioner Smith know when Air Products needed education and how you and Carol Whitmore jumped to the task and got a program over at MTI.
Right. Well, when the company came here, they were very concerned about workforce because they needed more than 100 welders. And so there was a tour of Manatee Technical College. Actually, it was Manatee Technical Institute at the time. And we took the company representatives over there, and they met with the director of Manatee Technical College, and there was a program developed just for them. that turned out their welders. Once we had that success, then Commissioner Whitmore initiated a group of meetings with the school district and all the career providers in the community to talk about internships and working up front to create jobs for companies. And we include those people when we're meeting with companies as well, so that they know right up front that, yeah, we might have a great building and we might have some land that looks attractive, but we also have the workforce to meet their needs. Right, so
And
this is,
that was all done in what length of time? With the training and everything?
Commissioner Whitmore said 67 days today, and it was something like that. Oh, the
training.
training of that started like in 6 to 9 months. They were turning out.
And they're making good money.
They're making very good money. That's right.
Very good
Right,
money.
good money.
They are. All right. So for Economic Development 101, I just want to talk a little bit more about targeted industries. There is a targeted industry list in your book. It's behind the application, which is in section 4. You know, targeted industries are headquarters, manufacturing, clean tech, infotech, and some others. And those are the types of industry that we are looking at for our incentives currently. Also, the wage must be at least 15% higher than the Manatee average wage. And that entry wage for incentives is an average in the company of $41,625. So you can see why service, restaurants, retail might not qualify. Also, another reason to focus on targeted industries is that most of the time, targeted industries receive their money, they sell their products outside of our region. So we're receiving money from outside of our region into our community. So that's new wealth for us. Restaurants and retail, they earn and spend their money right here in our community. So that's spin of dollars. So we want to make sure that we're bringing in wealth from outside the community. That's how we build wealth for our citizens. We also look at capital investment as a factor, and the projects are worked confidentially, which I've already discussed with you a little bit. And I think if you take a look at that statute, you'll see exactly how it works. When there's the ability to make an announcement, we will make every effort to let you know before it announces. We're going to work hard on making sure that the board knows before a company is announced. Then on to the TIF, which we've talked a lot about today. As Sherry mentioned, we're working as a team to develop the business improvement program to coincide with the neighborhood wellness strategy. There's been a lot of research done by Ivan Groom and others about what other communities are doing for their small businesses. We're doing outreach to find out what companies want and what they actually need. And then we're providing technical assistance, and we think that that will be a large element of our business improvement program, because a lot of small businesses need help accessing financing, being bankable, having a business plan, lots of things that we can help them with along the way. We're focusing now on the corridors and the former CRA districts. And we'll have those customized incentives back to you sometime in the early part of the year. We're also working really hard in economic development to make connections. A big project that we've had this year that I know you're all familiar with is the M3, the Millennial Movement. It's added a lot of energy to economic development and to other economic development organizations who followed along and now have their millennial groups like the EDC and the Chamber, and we work with Realize Bradenton, and we're working on community engagement with them so that we can attract that young, vibrant workforce to our community. We're also working very closely with the library. Our library system is an economic development tool. A lot of communities don't have that in their libraries. It's really cutting edge. Thanks to Ava and Sherry for their vision on that. Recently, the library held a job fair. They had 400 attendees, 44 participating companies, and it's thought that around 40 people secured positions at their job fair.
Cool.
They also have a small business incubator on the second floor where companies can come and work out of the library and get started. They have makerspace, and on Monday, the 16th, we're going to be holding a small business expo at the library. There's a flyer in the front of your notebook about that, and we invite you to come. It's 9 to 11 at the Central Library on Monday. See, I've talked about business outreach, and I've talked about our work with universities. We are meeting with universities, but we also have the millennials out there on the ground, meeting with students, talking about the jobs in the community and the future of our community and workforce. So a lot of what we do in economic development is connect organizations to each other. And that's also part of the Business Retention and Expansion Program. To date, as of 8/25/2015, which was the last time we brought a project before the board, there are 4,224 potential jobs to be created and retained. That includes 3,890 new and 334 retained jobs, and we're very excited about that. The incentives approved by the board for these companies is almost $10 million now, $9.9 million. And when we bring an incentive project to you, we have calculated a return on investment for that project and for every project. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the return on investment.
This is great.
Oh, yes.
There you go.
The average wage of the projects that have been approved for incentives is $49,620. So that's 37% higher than our local wage, our local average wage. And that's pretty darn good. We're proud of that number. We also have charts for you. They're also in your book. In my effort to be expedient, I skipped over those as well. They're right in front of the fiscal sheet, and we have some of the pie charts right here in the PowerPoint as well. The jobs projected to be created through 2021 is 3,890. You'll see that the largest number of those are in manufacturing, headquarters, and infotech. And we also have an exciting opportunity now in our community regarding life sciences with the announcement last week of the CORE project in Lakewood Ranch, which is going to be a new hub for biotech businesses. It's going to be very exciting, 305 acres and up to over 4 million square feet of development over the next several years. And we will be providing rapid response for that, so we're excited about it. These are the jobs created through 2014. 1,742 jobs have already been created by your program. The highest number are in headquarters, followed by manufacturing and also infotech. And you'll see that sports performance has jumped up there. It's about 10% of the jobs now. And we see that as a growing sector, of course, and we're very proud of that. So that's about a 45% job creation to date, and we expect many more along the way. The local incentives adopted are shown here. The EDI portion is about $8.2 million, and the transportation impact fee incentive adopted is about $509 million. And these projects, again, are the top three are headquarters, manufacturing, and infotech. Those seem to be the areas where we are growing the most. It's interesting to note that only 1% of our incentives to date have been provided for sports performance, even though it's jumping up there. The local incentives paid to date are around $2.8 million. 50% of that's been paid out has been to headquarters companies, and you know who one of our biggest headquarters companies is, Feld Entertainment. To our manufacturing, 22% to manufacturing, 11% to infotech, and 10% to life sciences, again, a growing sector. The projected capital investment for these companies, this is, I think, one of the most impactful things that we're going to talk about is over $523 million in our community. And that brings in a lot of taxes, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. The capital investment is greatest in the manufacturing area because they have to bring in a lot of equipment and machinery to get their work done. It's lower for headquarters where they just move into offices typically, and they have plug and play. Here, sports performance is at 8% though, and you'll see that growing over the years. And clean tech is up there also with 27% of the capital investment in our program. The potential wages in the community from our program is $2 billion with a B over the next 5 to 10 years. And this takes into account the jobs that are created by the companies, but then also the indirect jobs that are in the service industry, retail, shopping, cars purchased, and all those other jobs, the suppliers to our manufacturers and to our companies that locate here. $2 billion. The return on investment is calculated using these easy formulas. The direct jobs annually, the direct jobs projected times the average wage of the company times 5 years. So that's how we figure out how much the direct jobs will be. And then the indirect jobs, we use a very small multiplier, only 1.5, and it's thought that the manufacturing multiplier is up around 7. So this is a very conservative way to calculate this. The indirect jobs are projected times the Manatee County average wage times 5 years, and then we add that together, and that's how we got that $2 billion over 10 years or so. We also look at the capital investment that the company tells us that they're going to provide. We multiply that by 85% and then by the tax rate, and that's how we get our return on investment for our property taxes, which is going to be $332 million over the next 5 to 10 years. And from the $10 million that we may spend on these projects, it's a pretty good return on investment in economic development. We're also very proud of that. Finally, I just want to talk to you for just like a couple minutes about our future opportunities. Many of you have already heard the Bradenton Area Economic Development Corporation strategic plan rollout. They're also going to have their annual update this coming Friday. And so we'll be working alongside the Bradenton Area EDC on their strategic plan and on all their strategies and with their companies. We're also participating with Port Manatee's master plan. Many county staff, along with economic development, have been involved in the Port master plan, and we're standing by to see how we can assist with that. We also have been awarded the Brownfield grant this year. The county is the lead, and there's a brochure in the front of your booklet on our Brownfield program. It's a $500,000 grant. And we're having a kickoff meeting on Monday with the EPA regarding the grant and our partners, which include the City of Bradenton, the City of Palmetto, and the MPO. So we're very excited about that project and hope that it will help spur development in the urban area. We're also looking at trade mission opportunities. You know, we've had outbound and inbound, and there are some others on the horizon that we're looking at to stimulate foreign direct investment, where companies come here and invest in Manatee County and bring their companies here. We have the Port Manatee Business Incubator, which was a big hit on the trade mission and is available for companies to have a soft landing. If they want to come here from another country, they don't have to find a building, they don't have to hire staff, they don't have to put in infrastructure. We can just bring them into the incubator and they can go to work that day. If there's enough participation in the incubator, we might have staff at the incubator, you know, on a regular basis. We're looking at that. We also have a regional focus. Over the past 1 or 2 years, Sherry and I have been meeting with Sarasota County government's economic development arm regularly. We've collaborated on a lot of projects, and we have a lot of synergies. We're touring each other's companies. We recently toured Sarasota Technical College, and we have an upcoming tour with Manatee Technical College for them. So we have a great regional approach. It includes the city of Northport, and we're really proud of that. It's seen as a strong asset for us. We're also excited about the Strategic Site Initiative through FPL's work. FPL has hired a consultant to look at 5 counties in Central Florida, and we happen to be one of them. we are in the early stages of the project, and we can't really divulge all the different properties that are being looked at currently until we engage landowners in the future and have a comprehensive list. But I will tell you that of the 5 counties that are involved, we have the most sites than the other 4 counties combined, times 5.
Whoa.
Wow.
So we have a lot of land available for development, and that's surely to be a strong asset for us going forward.
To me.
And so that's the conclusion of my presentation today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sabatino, I got you.
Great job, and anytime if we call you, you know who's doing what, and you have it all down pat, your whole team. Just a quick question, who comes up with those project names?
Well, we work with the EDC on that, and over the years, we've used colors, rocks and minerals. You might notice we've recently been using car names. There's a lot of car names, and so we just get a list of words and go with it.
That's cute. And just so, would it be possible to add another category to your matrix there, to say what district these companies are in?
We have that
After the fact?
information available for you.
Okay, after the after
Yeah,
it's already been approved.
this chart that I sent you is part of a
huge.
big chart that
Right.
has the districts.
And I know because Milton was here, would his project, if it ever got off the ground, so to speak, qualify for a brownfield grant?
It's possible, yes, we would look at that.
Because it could be a blighted, stigmatized
It could,
area.
well, especially because of the like automotive, boat,
Right.
you know, all
Yeah,
of those
the
kinds of things that were done
chemicals.
there. So yes, it's possible. Also, any place there's portables, it's possible.
And I really think that's a good point. I mean, I think you need to
Mhm.
follow up with him. I mean, I was concerned about some of the things he said and some of the.
Had brought that up at one of my meetings with him about
too.
brownfield.
But yeah, so this would be good, maybe just to have a sit down. Sometimes you have to reach out. I know how busy he is.
Yeah.
He's got a great board that he's trying to sell this project, but
Really does.
we need to have some more communication, I think, possibly with him.
We can certainly reach out to him. We have met with him a couple of times. We've attended his events, his board meeting, and that kind of thing.
Okay, good.
He's got good community support.
So he does. Commissioner Smith.
Don't have anything right now, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, I just want to bring up one thing.
You're looking at me cross-eyed at this whole meeting, so I better quit talking.
I'm trying not to.
Look.
I'm not.
I got something.
I'm not the most patient person in the world, I have to admit. I did want to bring up something because you mentioned about MTC and Doug Wagner, and I just want to bring this up because I haven't had an opportunity to talk about this with everyone, that I've been approached, and we're going to be having a meeting with a guy named Brian Cam with the AmSkills German Apprenticeship Opportunity for Tampa Bay counties. And this is a program that they're operating right now in Pasco and Hernando counties, and I think even in Hillsborough. And Brian Cam is executive director of this group, and Catherine Starkey, who's a county commissioner in Pasco County, has been talking to me quite a bit about it. I know Catherine, she and I served on the basin board together. And it just sounds like a very interesting opportunity for economic development, because the idea is to bring this German-type apprenticeship program to our students. But what it does is create a workforce that can attract very high-skilled manufacturing jobs. So where we have a great organization in MTC that can do this, this is just another possible opportunity to partner with some folks that, and they got funding from the legislature, granted them funding to get it started, and he has volunteered to come here and do a meeting. And now that my wonderful assistant Yvonne is back in the office, she's helping to pull that meeting together. So you guys need to stay tuned. I'm sure she's contacted you, but I just want to let you all know that's something that I'm working on in my spare time, to try to get this so we can explore this opportunity. Because it sounds pretty cool. They had they were going to have a trip where they were going to Germany to meet with the folks, and they had a lot of people in the economic development world that were going on the trip, but they postponed it till April. So we have an opportunity. I'm not saying who, I don't know who would go, but we're talking with Sharon Hellstrom, even Carlos Vicaris is involved because of possible port opportunities and, you know, possibility of getting somebody that might want to do business out of Port Manatee, shipping possibilities. So we're having kind of a big convening meeting. It's being set up now. So I just want to let you all know that that's going on. If you have ideas, let me know. If you guys have any, I'm sure you'll be part of it, the discussion.
Great.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner Smith, you're still on?
No, I just want to thank Karen Stewart for doing a well presentation. It was very thorough, and when I first met with her, I was very impressed with her, to be honest with you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, great.
Good job.
I think the more we know about these programs, the better that we can promote them as well, you know, so I appreciate you bringing us up to speed on everything that's ongoing, and it's a significant investment the county makes in this program. Mr. Baugh?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am so impressed with this program and the job that you guys do. I mean, I know, Karen, you and I have had many conversation, and, you know, economic development is just so very important to this county. And when I'm looking at, you know, some of the figures that you've given us today, it's just, I mean, potential wages, $2 billion. It's just amazing at what you're accomplishing. So with the TIF now coming on, I just think it's something, you know, I don't want you to get overloaded, and I know you're getting some help, and you and I have had that conversation a lot in the past. So we're just going to have to, seriously, let's watch it, see if you're going to be able to handle it with what you have and the new person you have coming on, and, you know, let us know what you need.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, well, that's all I have on my board. Anything, Mr. Administrator, to
No, I would like
Out on a
to share in the
long-
thought that we like to bring good people to the table and set them free. You've seen today with Sherry and Karen and the rest of the neighborhood services, they've taken up the challenge and they run faster than most. So we're very proud of them. Thank you for your attention today. Thank you for your work.
Commissioner Baugh?
Yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention. I'm real excited about our group of millennials going out to Liquid Ranch. You know, when I was asked,
They let them in out there?
Well, they're going to, yeah, I'm really excited about it. I was in a meeting and I mentioned, you know, something was said about affordable housing. And I mentioned the millennials and the conversations that we had had and so forth. And I can tell you that the eyes just sparked. I mean, very excited about bringing the millennials out to see what it is that, you know, they're looking for, what would be good for you, and I'm really excited to see where it might carry us. So glad that's happening.
And I do want to open this up to the public. If there's anyone that would like to make comments on today's discussion, this would be your opportunity if anybody wants to come forward. Can we close this work session? Okay, seeing nobody jumping up to the microphone, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, we are done with today's work session.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time
very much.
today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, stroke of 5.